Mm-hmm.
Let me have this. Thank you very much. What I love is that I have cards. I saved all my cards from when I started working.
Oh,
So,
I know someone that does that, and I'm so sorry that I never did that.
and I have my old ID badges, and I've seen how I've aged over the years.
Well, have you progressed
That too.
professionally?
That too. Isn't nice to have a chairperson clerk?
Yes.
How bad my hair is today. That's the way it is. It looked good yesterday.
Just moving my ponytail up a little bit makes it just much better. A little more shape. Yeah, I used to always have it right there. And now I move it up a little bit. I like this much more.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you.
So, Paula, this is the Form 700 packet that I promised.
Oh, yes.
Clerk.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
that is due, and I'm going to remind all
And
the
then I have
board
to return these to the clerk.
Yes, and I'll do a reminder because they have to be, the hard copy, the wet signature copy has to be returned. So.
Okay, good.
How many things do you put in your wallet?
Oh, I just have my work ones on one side and my household ones on the other
I
side.
put in too many and I realized like my wallet.
Okay, bye.
All my things.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hi, Christine. How you doing?
It's not too often that we see each other. No.
When did you dye your hair?
I used to go to the other meetings, but now it's
Yeah.
When did you dye your hair?
Hair looks good.
well, I highlighted it. Hopefully it shows I highlighted it.
It looks, it's blonde now.
It's
It's
blonde,
blonde.
yeah. Like, that's what happens when it's curly. It looks blonder.
Oh yeah, because more light gets.
Yeah, it's weird. Hopefully it looks okay.
Well, that's wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Trying to change some up. My roots were getting real dark.
Are technological difficulties starting to happen now?
Well, we didn't have closed captioning last meeting, so.
Well, let alone
Yeah.
closed captioning. We didn't have video last meeting.
Yeah,
But we did have the bad thing right
We
there.
had
At
closed,
the-
captioning and video.
At the last council meeting.
Oh, we did? I didn't see that.
At our rent board meeting.
The
I
regular
don't-
meeting,
Oh,
at
the
the
regular,
last, at the
no,
council meeting,
special council meeting.
the most recent council meeting,
Uh-huh.
everything
they-
stopped.
Oh,
They
no.
all died.
Oh, well, that's why I
I've
was
been
live
told
streaming.
by Mark Newmanville that has been fixed, but they did some other upgrades today, which I'm hoping will not interfere with
Oh.
anything. But I don't really know
Upgrades,
until
that's
we-
that's always a frightening thing.
Yes. Especially when our department does it.
Yeah.
But at least Rose warned me, so.
Good.
I'm gonna eat.
That sounds like
Yeah,
a
there you
wonderful
go.
idea.
Devoured some nachos.
Oh, nice.
Jelly is full.
Well, I actually have, so I was thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna eat dinner, and then there's that package across the street.
Oh,
Should I go there? Do you have enough time?
we will have a closed session, so
Oh.
at least half an hour.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Not quite. I don't, but a lot of our board members have iPads, so one of them, if they brought it with them, I have an Android, sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Going forward, I will bring you.
Yeah, no, that was my fault. I didn't realize how low it got.
But you know what, I think several of the board members have iPads, or
Okay.
iPhones, so they might.
Okay, we'll see how it plays out.
I would have.
So question, you know how in the old chambers, when we were displaying something on the laptop and we wanted it to go straight into the street feed? We had to hook up that, some sort of, I can't
something
remember what
happen?
device was called.
Yes. Let me check in the back. I think we have the same thing.
Okay.
So I'll
So
check.
do I have to just let me know if I have to hardwire the laptop or if I can just into the staff table to get it to display?
Yeah, let me call Joe back because I haven't done this part of it yet.
Without me, will never display.
I don't think we have a form yet, but when we do, just call, let me know.
I
so
saw
can
you
call
with your
you.
girlfriend or
Okay.
somebody at Costco this last week or something.
Don't tell his wife.
Oh, it's your wife.
Don't tell his wife that.
I didn't get you in trouble, I'm sorry.
I don't take my girlfriend to Costco.
Oh. Ouch.
Hi, Joe, just a quick thing. So, Amy wants to play a video, and I'm looking through what's going to review the video.
Take the last tape off the last session. What time will the meeting start around, Amy?
It's supposed to start at 7, like every day.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It depends on when the session gets out.
Thank you.
Don't really know.
All right. No, I was just wondering a fair proximity, because I'm thinking of going to get something to eat.
Yeah, no way of knowing. Sometimes the closed session finishes, sometimes it goes 30 minutes over. There's
Yeah.
really no way to predict.
Hello, ma'am. You look beautiful. You know, when you run for the rep board, I want to support you. I'm so busy as a supervisor that I probably don't have time to run your campaign, but I will support you.
Well,
I
thank
just
you.
want you to know that.
I really appreciate that.
Amy,
Sorry?
give water.
Yeah.
Can I
Hey.
get a glass?
Hello, ma'am.
In a minute.
Okay, so I plugged it in, I have the laptop open, logged in, but I'm not getting any feed, via the I'm not seeing anything on our presentation. Is there a setting I need to set up, or?
Well, I mean, I can do what I normally, that's what I thought you guys would know. I mean, I know.
I'm talking to Joe,
Oh, sorry.
no problem.
Sorry. Here. Let me, is it hooked up to the network? Connected.
It's a little cyclotron. Yeah, okay, I'm here. Yes. Okay. None of the laptop buttons are? It's on production switcher right now. The physical laptop? Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, I see the laptop button. Yes, 5 laptops. No, none of them are selected. So we just go back to production switcher. Okay. Is the video on a thumb drive?
No, it's on the laptop.
Okay. So, okay, you're calling it up? Yeah,
Yeah.
she's called it up right now.
It's playing.
All right, I'm gonna go in the back and check it. She's playing it through right now. I'm gonna check it back. See if I can see the presentation. No, I can't see the presentation.
Well, I don't have the, oh, you put it in, okay. Here, let me do the function F8. Projector.
Yes. DJ in the back. Okay.
Do you see it, now? I just did the function F8.
Okay. She said she would function at 8. She has a PC. I don't know if it. Okay. Where can I find that? Okay. The thing that I was saying is I don't see an HDMI input for this computer.
Oh, I think it would be on the back, wouldn't it?
Okay. Do you know how to toggle this to a presentation mode?
Yeah, I did. That's the function F8 where whatever is on
Oh.
there, it should display, but I don't have an HDMI cable plugged in there, though. Do we need an HDMI?
Okay, let me try this. Duplicate.
Yeah.
Oh, you did that one.
I did that, yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm gonna try toggling through some of the various ones that she mentioned. So far, none of that. Okay. Still nothing. I'll put up another toggle. Okay,
Do you?
I'm gonna switch the input to laptop 5.
Yeah, I was just gonna do it.
Okay.
Okay, so laptop 5 is
All right.
switched.
Joe?
Or should I connect it to him? Oh, there we
Okay.
go.
Okay, so she just did something. She toggled laptop 5, and
Here, let's see.
now I'm gonna check if I can see it. All right, yes, now I'm seeing it in presentation.
You are?
I'm seeing it in presentation.
But I'm not, though, not up here. Okay, so function F8,
Okay, I'm switching.
duplicate.
Oh,
Oh, I just
wait,
did,
did you do something?
yeah, I just did function F8.
No. Okay, because we had it.
Well, I mean, that's,
Okay, well, it's back here on this.
there.
on
You
the
didn't have it
screen.
up here, so now we've got it here. So now I just need audio. Do you see it now?
Okay.
Why do I not have audio? No, it's not.
Yeah. Okay, Amy, don't do anything, I'm gonna do a test.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna try to switch back to camera one. Yeah, it overwrote. Yeah. Shoot the video. Okay. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, great. It looks like we're ready to rock over here.
Does he, yeah, but we still don't have audio, so that's.
We did that part.
Right, but I didn't hear that.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yes, no problem. All right, talk to you much later. Bye.
Sorry, I wasn't sure who you're talking to.
No, I know, it's different, it's difficult. Okay, so what Joe said is that our best bet is either to aim a camera at the video while it's playing, which isn't optimal, or we set it the way we have it right now, and then when the video is over, just make sure to switch it back to the production switcher mode, because otherwise I can't cut back to the city council.
No, I got that part, but we still don't have audio, so it's not gonna do any good. Like, the video's playing right now, but I have no audio, so we're not.
Well, are the speakers on?
As far as I know, yeah.
Because I have there's an audio input here. I'm not sure. The only other, what Joe also suggested, what Joe also suggested
Hang on a second.
is that he said that we can just aim a mic at this. It's not optimum, but
No, I
if
think
we had
that's
more
fine,
time to
I'm
test.
looking for optimum, I just, if the video is able to feed directly into the monitors, I was thinking audio.
Certainly.
So let me just, I'm gonna turn on the production switcher.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I do want to see.
Room. Okay, video, yeah, the mute was on, so now let me, hold on, let's see. Volume. Okay, now I have everything unmuted in the room, but I'm still not hearing it. Hey!
How are you?
Good, so I wanted to tell you, when I left yesterday,
Yes.
I tried to arm this thing, and it would not arm to save my life. Every button I pressed, nothing. And I know how to do it, so what was I missing?
You did 4 numbers,
Yep, the code. But
your code.
our code, yeah, but
Forward.
every time I pushed, nothing, like the screen didn't change at all. And then you do 1 to confirm or 2 to, nothing, the screen didn't. And I pressed
Oh,
really,
it will do that. Do you have a few minutes? Do you have a second?
yeah, here. I've got 2 seconds.
No, I'll show you.
Okay. Right, but what you're doing, how do you know it's beeping? When I did it, there was no beep and nothing changed. And Mark, you can go home, I had to press really hard. But I pressed so hard and there was no beep. Right, right, when the screen didn't change at all. to speak at public comment, or you just,
No, I don't have a word to say.
okay.
Just a couple of ears that I hope are still working so I can hear.
Jeff, do you think it would help if I plugged it in over here, since this is on the dais?
No, I think this was the setup that we've
Yeah, that's
gotten
what-
so far, and I think this is the best, the most safe.
Yeah, because in the instructions, Mark gave me, it said that when you have a presentation, to do it at the staff table, which is why I set it there, so.
Yeah, no doubt.
So that's as loud as we can get it?
Well, what I'm saying is we can try basically using this microphone to pick it up so it can be heard.
Can we test it now, though?
Yes, we can, yeah.
So the
that's
thing is, I have everything is off mute, so I'm just wondering why I can't.
This
hear
one?
it.
This mic?
Oh, no,
Check,
actually.
1, 2, 1, 2.
That one isn't controlled from here. I think you actually just have to press the button to turn it on.
Yo, check.
Oh, there we go.
Some really
Is that what's coming
inspiring
out?
stuff about the first black man to hold public office in Northern California. About much.
As a native of Berkeley, my mother, Gloria Nelson, heavily encouraged.
It seems like
me
it's
to
just
do a
coming from the main.
documentary about
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
After several years of contemplation, we finally worked it out to where she's actually the executive producer of the film, and she really strongly encouraged me to do this story about this wonderful man.
That's great. And he, a lot of people don't necessarily
just turned it
know
up on
of
the
him
computer.
as a civil rights pioneer specifically. He's not somebody who I grew up hearing about in the history books, but clearly, he really was a pioneer and was behind some really powerful, far-reaching legislation.
Byron Rumford is recorded as the California Assemblyman that has probably passed the most single amount of significant legislation in the California state history.
Incredible.
So it's an honor for me to have the opportunity to produce this film about it.
Absolutely. We're talking the Fair Housing Act. Is that correct? And also
Fair Housing Act, Fair Employment Act,
which prohibited discrimination in employment.
Exactly, and just so many other bills that he passed throughout his
Rep the
career.
video so at the
really
moment
was a
that we need it,
legendary,
you're just
figure.
gonna switch. Actually, let's do a test of that.
Yeah, please.
So, okay. Oh man, I have not used a Mac and a PC in so long. It's so nuts. Okay. So we're on production switcher right now, correct?
Correct.
All right. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. Please welcome Doug Harris. He's the producer and director of Fair Legislation, the Byron Rumford story, a documentary that I happened to get a little bit of a glimpse at. Before you
That
tell
seems
us
to be a good workaround.
All right, excellent.
Okay, so I will keep the screen right here,
Perfect.
ready to go, and then that way, when there is the cue, I guess. Well, is there about a time in the agenda where that's?
Well, I'll just ask the chair for a moment, and I'll just say your name out loud.
Okay. Oh, after public forum. Okay, so
Yeah,
great. I'll
exactly.
come right out after public forum and be ready.
Okay.
And since I don't need to do anything in the back there, everything works out.
Perfect.
And also, it was like 5 minutes, right?
You know what? I haven't actually listened to it.
Okay, no problem.
I think it's just a couple, like 3 minutes, I want to say.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Oh, and I'm
Then
going to
I'll-
turn the video volume up too.
Okay, so I'm gonna get ready in the back.
All right. And
Thank you very much.
Turn that.
Can somebody just tell me what the Wi-Fi
I
is?
don't know what the Wi-Fi is, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. network is teacher with a capital T and the password is vegetable.
Vegetable. With a capital V?
No.
Okay,
Uppercase.
thank you.
I think that's good. I agree with that. All right. See you
Now, I
guys.
think I spelled it correctly.
Thanks, Dad.
Any scratches?
Christina,
Don't have to answer
Yes.
that, got my
where
lawyer
do you
book.
come now?
Okay, I'll try.
I do not have a copy of this laptop.
So it's teacher with a capital T, yeah, and it's vegetable. Now,
Really?
yeah,
Oh, all lowercase.
lowercase, yes. See? Help each other.
Wow.
F, table.
There we go.
It's two E's, right? Vegetable?
VEGETABLE, yes.
Yes.
Great, okay.
Are you on?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you
great.
so much. Sorry I couldn't help you out before. I
That's
legit
all right.
did not know what it was. I was still trying to access City of
I
Berkeley.
know if you knew it, you would tell me.
I would, definitely.
Thank you. Until next time.
Certainly.
I'm just waiting.
All right, that one open already?
I worked on my issue, Miss Amy. So I figured it out.
Oh, great.
Dr.
And then
Cedron, how are you?
I'll bring this back and see how we can work on it, but in the meantime, I would look to do a workaround.
Okay, so just a reminder that, so Igor, because Igor's calling in, all of the votes need to be roll call?
Yes, so,
Okay.
I've never had a problem with it.
Okay.
I'm gonna visit here, pa. First time. Oh, so you're sitting right next to Commissioner Murphy?
Oh, yeah, maybe you'll check.
No, we're not taking, women up in front.
All right.
You sit here.
Yo, this is fancy.
Any up around.
I miss the
No,
smell.
this over here.
The
This
smell?
one have
Well, Phil will figure out how to work this thing.
I can do this how way I want to. So
You're
we're-
gonna do the first one.
Mine or yours?
I did 185.
What if I came in and felt like today I wanted to be a man? Like, but I have
Yeah,
two chairs.
I mean, but you
I'm
know,
just going
I'm not the chair, I don't know, you gotta discuss that.
Might just wake up tomorrow and say,
yeah, I mean,
Okay, but then I look at myself
Mom, I had a board.
in the screen while we're talking.
Yeah, it is kind of,
Water?
yeah, it's a little daunting.
So, did everyone get the trans site?
yes.
Okay, good.
Oh, now I'm like everyone's right.
Oh, you got, oh, it's in front of you, okay,
I just didn't have a chance to
Okay,
review
so
that.
completely different than the individual.
No, I had the resolutions, and then I, wrote the report. So, the resolution did not change, the report is basically explained.
Okay, okay.
Oh, this is
Right.
why Berkeley is a progressive city. Did you get an agenda real
Who sits here again?
John.
Oh.
You know what we ought to do, John? Ought to bring a flag. Have you ever seen Oski drink? Have you ever seen Oski drink? So Oski has a little.
You know, how do you solve this kind of thing? Oh! And so you have this professor today, and he said, that, you know, it's like, all the years that I'm talking about, it's like, you know.
And now I wish I'd been
No,
over.
it's like, literally.
Oh, you know what, sit next to me. Because Maria's gonna be late, and then sits there.
Oh, really?
Oh, James.
Oh, you're trying to keep me totally isolated, I have nobody to, oh, this man. okay.
That's hilarious.
You know what's even better? Here, how's this? So I can leave and just put this here. And everybody-
Perfect. Just put a little speaker.
That looks good. It looks healthy too.
Well, for you.
It's not Costco.
Hella late. Okay. I'm
Well,
actually
it might be
gonna
Costco.
apologize
It's
for
not
what
good
it
stuff.
comes to in terms of time.
I think Heloise, 35.
Scarf it down while you can.
That's highly specific, but that's.
Wish I did that.
You out.
No, I appreciate it.
Pulling it on my ass. This lady gotta bring food.
Yeah.
He's at a white privilege conference.
And in Cedar Rapids, my best friend is
White
from,
privilege conference is in Iowa.
my best friend is from Cedar Rapids. She's black, but she has such elegant that I have to tell her.
Sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or call your operator to help you.
Igor's not doing normal.
Yeah, but his number.
We're sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please
Much more melodious, you know? It's like the Jesse County
San
voice.
Jose has
Oh,
a,
I see, I see, I see.
probably has more Afro-Mexicans. It produces a larger population in San
Oh, good.
Jose.
It stayed.
Look at that.
So, Paula, right before the,
Is there any way we can
the
roll
record
that
video
to
is
somewhere
scheduled right
else?
after public forum,
A little bit.
and Tef and I.
Or
just
that's for
need-
you guys.
That's for them, yeah.
Just coordinate a
You
little
couldn't
bit,
see us on the
so,
other side, sorry.
sorry, you can't hear me?
So they might,
Sorry, the record
I'm
video
not
is
sure if
scheduled
they,
right after public
one or
forum.
two, they might want to.
Yeah, they might want to put it in the middle, right? For everybody to see? Unless all you guys are going to congregate around to stay here.
We don't want to be too, you know.
That's true.
I didn't even know what it's like. I didn't even. Oh, see, I don't know. See, with this seat,
Okay.
I'm half on the. Oh no, I guess
What do I need to know about Wi-Fi?
The network is teacher with a capital T, and the password is lowercase vegetable.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Igor.
Hi,
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, you sound a little far away, so hang on, I'm going to increase the volume.
Is this any better?
Oh, it's not you, it's the microphone in here, so I just increased it. Can you hear me? You should be able to hear me more loudly.
I can show you fine.
Okay, Paula, is that sufficient for? So Igor, unlike before, you can put us on mute, but if you can just stay connected, we're going to start in just a minute or two.
Okay, great. Should I text you if I want to get on queue, or just,
Sorry, say that one more time?
should I text you if I want to
Oh,
get on
yes,
queue, or
yes.
just speak loudly?
No, you can do either one, but
Yeah.
go ahead and text me. I've got my
I'll prefer
phone.
texting you.
Yeah,
Okay.
just text me and say I want to speak, and I'll announce it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Igor. Can't hear me.
So, Paula, did you want to wait for Alejandro, or should we begin?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's call this meeting to order.
Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. It is March 21, 2019, first day, full day of spring. Hallelujah. And I'm calling this a regular meeting.
I don't know if they're coming, are they? Do you know?
Not right now.
So let's do roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Alpert.
Present.
Chang informed us that he will be late. Commissioner Murphy. Poblet. Solosky.
Yes, present.
Simon Weisberg. Sotoville.
Yes, I just spoke with Commissioner Chang. His estimated time of arrival is 7:30.
Thank you. Commissioner Tregub is present via teleconference as we speak. And Chair Laverde.
Excuse me, present.
Thank you. Just a note, please, everyone turn on your microphones. It's the little image with the
Thank you.
face
Thank you.
speaking. Thank you. So we have a quorum.
Great. So I just want to report that we had a closed-door session, and there is nothing to report. There's no action was taken today. So next on the agenda, we are going to take a look at the approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to move the agenda?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved by Tregub, seconded by Solosky.
Can I make some suggestions?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Can I see if there are any objections to moving items 7A1, 7A2, 7A4, and 7A6 to the consent calendar?
1, 2, 4, and 6. So let me confirm, 7A, 1, 2, 4, and 6 to the consent agenda?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Well, actually, Solosky is the one who seconded.
I have no objections to that, so seconder is okay with it.
Approves.
So all those in favor, do we have to do?
I need to do a roll call vote. So
roll call.
if there's no further discussion, so just to repeat, the motion is to approve the agenda with the exception of moving items 7A1, 7A2, 7A4, and 7A6 to consent. Commissioner Alpert.
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes.
Poblete. Yes. Solosky.
Yes.
Sotomayor.
Yes.
Commissioner Tregub.
Yes.
Thank you. Liberte.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. So next we have public forum.
I have no cards.
I have no cards. Anyone in the audience would like to speak? You gentlemen? Ms. Schwartz?
I'm okay, thank you.
Dale? Okay, thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda, and we're gonna give Amy some time to set up, is a video, a short documentary on about a Berkeley hero. And we were going to show this video last month, but unfortunately we had some technical difficulties. And so this is about Berkeley's first African-American assembly member. His name was Byron Rumford. Mr. Rumford was elected to the State Assembly in 1948. He had a very nice long run in the Assembly, and he I consider him a hero. He would be my new patron saint of housing. Because of him, we have anti-discrimination law in housing. So is this the video, Miss Amy? We're still going?
Jeff, are you ready?
I'm very ready.
Okay. So everyone should be able to see the video.
Wait a second. Is this the video I was provided? This doesn't look like the video.
It says fair legislation.
The Byron
Top
Rumford
left
story?
corner.
Yeah.
It might...
Because it was a 3-minute, 9-second video. I mean, this could be really good, but I haven't seen this. But this documentary was...
Let's just watch it.
While we wait, we might as well. It'll be 5 minutes.
Is that okay, Jay?
Oh, this is it.
This is it. Yeah.
Yes.
You can never whip these boys if you don't keep you and them separate. I found that out in Birmingham. You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
For the generation growing up today, I don't think they really understand what racial segregation was like in terms of the many, many ways in which black people were simply second-class citizens.
It didn't matter how much money you had, how intelligent you were. If your skin was brown, opportunity was denied.
The unions wouldn't let you in to get a union card. I'm talking about the plumbers, the electricians.
At the time, there were no mayors, no city council members. We didn't have people on the school boards, or we didn't have people on boards or commissions. There was basically no black representation in Northern California. At the time, they had all the covenants for the restrictive housing, but no one admitted that it was there or that it was a problem.
I don't think Dad really had any personal desires to run for public office, but the community meetings resulted in him being drafted to run for the Assembly District. And the 1948 general election, he was elected, and so that started his political career in the 17th Assembly District.
He was a new legislator, he was a black legislator, and he just moved in there like gangbusters and started coming up with legislation.
When it comes to significant legislation in the history of this state, I would not know of any legislature who achieved the number and the significant passage of bills than Byron Rumford.
Byron Rumford is the father of housing in California. He is a major leader in the world.
From a racial standpoint, he kind of tuned in that, you know, we're being prohibited from living where we'd like or renting an apartment where we would like.
His fair housing legislation opened the way for a California Supreme Court decision and for a U.S. Supreme Court decision. And that U.S. Supreme Court decision, of course, was valid in all other states, in addition to California, everywhere.
Byron Rumford was obviously the seed that was planted. He served in the legislature for about 9 terms, which is very unique to be there that long. It was long before term limits came into effect, of course.
You look at people like Jackie Robinson or Martin Luther King or others that are recognized as turning the hands of civil rights and modernizing America. Byron Rumford was certainly one of those pioneers, and Byron Rumford made them confront the reality that there was a problem that needed to be addressed.
I do want to add that in 1944, 4 years before Mr. Rumford became an elected legislator, he was a member of California's Rent Control Board, and he represented Berkeley, Oakland, and other parts of the East Bay during World War II when the federal government imposed rent control and price controls all over the country. And I want to say that I first learned about Mr. Rumford about 3 years ago when I came across a statue that is on the Medium on Sacramento Street near Ashby. So, thank you, everybody.
Chair, if
Yes.
I can just apologize again for the technical difficulties that prevented us from playing this video during Black History Month, which was your intent. So thank you, everyone, for your patience. And I did want to remind the public and the board that we did post this video both on our website, on Facebook last month during Black History Month. It is still available. So again, I apologize to you and to Mr. Rumford.
Oh, no, but thank you very much. We got to share it and got to share it with everyone. Thank you. Commissioner Sotovejil?
Thank you. Good friend of our families is Ron Chavez, and he provided a video that he just created called Redlining. It's on YouTube, and I'll share it with the commission. You saw it? Oh, yeah. So some crazy statistics. Between 1932 and 1962, 98% of loans from the Federal Housing Administration and Veterans Administration were given to whites, 2% to African American and other minorities. Berkeley had restrictive covenants, as we all know. In 1940, 42% of white folks owned their own home, and in 2000, 71%. This is why we have so many issues with racial disparities and people who feel privileged and they're just human, and others who don't feel privileged and are also human. And it also adds to a later item that we are going to be discussing, so thank you.
Commissioner Murphy.
Growing up in Berkeley, I was born and raised in North Berkeley. My grandmother, Alice Cunningham, had a property in North Berkeley, and Byron Rumford employed my grandmother at Rumford Medical Center, and she was the nurse there from when I was about 8 years old all the way up until she passed away. And so I really appreciate Mr. Byron Rumford, because the income was why she was able to keep her house when she was here. He also had provided low-income housing when he was alive, and it's still going on right now. He provided low-income housing to people on Section 8 and Shelter Plus Care, and he is one of the African-American property owners that still look out for the underserved, and I appreciate that.
And I just do want to say one other thing. It was interesting that Mr. Rumford, he passed this legislation in 1963 for anti-discrimination. It was the real estate industry that filed suit in the state Supreme Court, and then the state Supreme Court said, no, you can't discriminate, and so that industry went and took all the way up to the Supreme Court. So this is the same industry that is refusing to allow any regulation on their property. So interesting. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next item.
Chair, one last point. Question to staff. Is it possible to put this video that the chair put forward on our website in addition to the redlining video for educational purposes?
I just said that it was on our website and on Facebook since last month.
Oh, great, that's right. So can we put the redlining one on as well?
It's not on the agenda, so I wouldn't be able to put it.
I could put it on for the next, but I mean, do we need to have it on the agenda to post it on there?
I wouldn't post it on the agenda webpage, but if the executive director says I can post it on our website.
It is a very good video. It's a 15-minute video, and the statistics that it provides are amazing. So it's a great video. So I would be happy if we would.
I'll look at it if it seems appropriate and part of the board's general jurisdiction. I'd be happy to put it on, and if I decide not to, and you can. I
know where to find you.
You can agendize it next time and direct me to.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we're going to, the consent item, we're going to the approval of the meetings from last month. Do I have anyone who wants to motion?
I will move the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We need to roll call?
We do. Let me just check. I have to check and make sure that Commissioner Tragoop hasn't texted me. No, we're good. So this is moving consent items 5A and 5B, as well as 7A1, 7A2, 7A4, and 7A6 from the action item calendar. Commissioner Alpert?
Aye.
Murphy?
Yes.
Could you make sure your microphone's on, please? Thank you.
I'm sorry, Amy.
That's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Poblet?
Yes.
Solosky?
Yes.
Sotovillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Tragoop?
Yes.
Thank you. Laverde?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so we're now going to the action items. Okay. We're going to go to action item number 3, recommendation of the revisions of the rent board agenda production process.
Forgive me. This item I was going to present to Commissioner Cheng to present, but he's not here, so I can give it to you. The actual hard copy for the board.
Can I ask you something? Can we wait until he shows up? So then let's wait till he shows up, and let's go to item number 5, recommendation to change the membership of the 4x4 Joint Committee on Housing. I'd like to get to see a raise of hands of how many people want to talk about this item.
I think some of our other commissioners want to weigh in on this issue too, I'm assuming.
So we have 2 people who want to talk about this? Okay.
I think it's important that the other commissioners are here as well. They're coming.
Okay, we can't hear you.
Oh, I was trying to have a side
Oh,
conversation.
no.
Okay, I think that is very important that we wait. The next commissioners, they said they'd be arriving in the next 10 minutes. Maybe we can move on to the next item. Hopefully, friendly.
That would be information, yeah.
Well, this is a problem when commissioners don't show up on time.
We all been late.
One of 3 of the late commissioners have children.
Please.
Thank you.
So, okay, well, we can put these off, and we can go into section 8, information items.
The first one, Chair, I actually asked the executive director to put on. the city clerk's office has reminded me to remind everyone on the board that your annual Form 700s are due. I did bring a copy of the email if you'd like it. According to the city clerk's office, each one of you have been actually emailed and mailed a packet. So if you haven't received that, please contact the city clerk's office immediately. It is due on April 1st, and there is a penalty for not completing it. So if you have any questions, I'll distribute this reminder to the person to speak to in the city clerk's office, but let me know if you need any help, and that's all.
Thank you for the reminder.
You're welcome.
Okay then, so let's move on to item 8.3. It's a mid-year budget update by the executive director.
Yeah, I'll start with this, and then if members of the Budget and Personnel Committee want to chime in, they also can. So in your packet, you have your, this is two things. It's both your year-end report for last fiscal year and your mid-year report for this fiscal year. So based upon prior year's comments from board members, I'm going to give just a high-level overview, and rather than really focusing in detail on the numbers, and then I'm more than happy to answer any questions and go into greater detail either tonight or if you have questions in the future. So more than happy to talk about things. So I also wanted to, getting all my caveats out of the way, this is also, these are our preliminary but very near final numbers, even for last year, because we don't have final numbers until we've reconciled with the outside auditor. So we get initial numbers, and then the auditor comes in, and the city goes through, I think they're up to 4 different iterations, and between the third and the fourth version, it changed about $60. So this is very, very close to where we think we're going to land, and it actually might be the numbers that we end up on. But if you see small changes in the future, I just want to explain why. But as far as the basic direction, that's not really going to change at all. So getting to last year's update. You ended last year with a substantial reserve of $1.2 million, but that's not as impressive as it first appears, because a third of that amount is basically already committed. So we've not yet touched the $400,000 that's set aside to develop a long-term strategy for a sustainable database. So last year, or a year ago, you increased the fees to come up with a pool of money, $400,000, to do whatever we felt we needed to do related to the making sure that we were able to respond when the city decided they no longer were able to provide a service. In the next few weeks, you'll be getting a report, probably at your next, our hope is at your next board meeting, the full board, but hopefully in the next few weeks, the Budget Personnel Committee will get our initial reports about that potential plan. So for this reason, $800,000 of that $1.2 million is uncommitted. So the way we look at, what your available fund balance is $800,000. So that's why it's one number, but as far as what you haven't already committed and what potentially is discretionary, it's about $800,000. That is similar to what the city historically has set as their goal for a reserve balance. That's right around 15–16%. Historically, we've been around 8%, and sometimes even lower. So that's what basically the $800,000 represents. I want to point out it's significantly higher than when you adopted your budget a year earlier, where you thought you'd end last year. There's other than that $400,000 that's set aside for future use, there are 2 primary causes for this larger than anticipated reserve balance. The first, we had greater than budgeted revenue last year by about $37,000. And the second, we had sadly, we had substantial salary and fringe benefit savings. In part, there were a few positions that turned over, and it took several months to hire, but most dramatically, we had about 8 months of salary savings from the deputy director position being vacant. So that salary savings combined with greater than anticipated revenue is why the board ended with a reserve balance closer to, excuse me, closer to 15 or 16%, rather than about half of that, what you thought you'd do. Looking at the table in front of you, I don't see anything else in last year that's particularly noteworthy as far as deviating from what we expected when we last spoke last spring and as late as last June. But if you see anything, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. We also have good news for the current fiscal year. At the mid-year point, which is the blue column on the table in front of you, we have collected all but about $6,000 of what we budgeted for the entire fiscal year. So our revenues are midway through the year, we're almost what you projected for the entire year. That was primarily due to a large settlement that we discussed in closed session last year. We're even without that settlement, we're a little bit ahead of where we thought we'd be. But so that's why we're in such a good position as far as the revenue side of things mid-year through the year. I anticipate that we'll end this year with at least $30,000 more revenue than the $5.1 million that you budgeted, and there's a good chance even more than that. So you'll hit and exceed your revenue goals this year. Moving on to the expenditure side, once again, primarily because of salary savings from vacant positions, the same deputy director position is the biggest one. There's 2 office specialist 2s. 2 positions have been vacant, but we are about to fill that. We have people that are going to be starting at the beginning of April. So primarily because of that, we anticipate expenditure savings of at least $30,000 this year, and it might even be higher as we always refine as we get deeper into the year, and we're reviewing review later and later reports. I want to point out that we had a long discussion with the committee, but one of the things that's particularly frustrating, challenging this year is the city changed their accounting software this year. So we'd used, for better or worse, we used a system called Funds for probably over 25 years, almost 30 years, and the city launched IRMA, was the new system, in October, November, and it's very, very difficult. It was much easier in the old system to drill down and get the detailed understanding. I get a number, but before I try analyzing and projecting, I like having an understanding of what that number really represents. So future reports will, these numbers are accurate as far as what we spent. They're a little less detailed and precise as far as the analysis of why and the projections in the future. So the future reports will be, will definitely provide greater detail in that regard. A couple points of interest about the current year's expenditures. If you look at the far right column on projected year FY 2019, our office space is estimated to be about $5,000 more than budgeted. That shouldn't be a surprise. It's based upon the terms of the lease that we negotiated. So we were early in negotiations at the time you adopted the budget, and we concluded the negotiations over the summer. Once again, in addition, what appears that we're going to be way over on hourly employees. That's the second item down there. That's item 1103. We budgeted $10,000, and we're going to spend somewhere $120,000, as high as $140,000. But the good news is that that is that's offset by the salary savings in monthly employees. So I just wanted to explain, we had planned to hire career employees, which we track in 1101. Because of the vacancies, we've hired non-career but benefited employees until we're able to fill things on a career basis. So it's just when you add the two up, we still have a net salary savings of about $30,000, but that one line item sort of sticks out like a sore thumb. The bottom line is that we anticipate ending this year in a position at least as good as we did last year, as we ended last year. But we'll also have, like I said, we'll have a greater clarity about those specific numbers in the upcoming months. We also, by the time you adopt your next budget, will have greater clarity about what our long-term strategy is concerning our database, the cost and the plan to move forward to have our database solution. So unless you have questions, specific questions about the numbers, I can sort of try summarizing what the budget committee discussion.
Commissioner Solosky?
Thank you. Thanks, Jay. It's a healthy budget. I will point out that a lot of the fund balance is because of position vacancies, some longer than others. Deputy director comes to mind. Just a query here. In some of the organizations I've worked with, there's actually a line item for a reserve, and we don't do that. We just have a fund balance. But it may be, I think it may be educational to have an asterisk down below saying, we generally like to have a 7, 8, 10%, you know, in that area, and that would be roughly this amount of, you know, blah, blah, blah. You do have, you have a comment about the RTS setting aside the 400,000. So as you indicated, it's not 1.2 million, it's actually 800,000. But that's a fund balance that's not clearly stated as a reserve. Just a thought. And I will say, and I don't know if Igor is going to repeat this or wanted to say the same thing, for committees and board members who have anything that is going to have any budgetary impact, it's important to get that in as soon as possible to Jay, Paola, so that the Budget and Personnel Committee can work on those things and incorporate that in the budget if, you know, if necessary, okay? I think that's it for now.
Yeah, thank you. What I usually in the budget, when we do a narrative in the budget reports, so the written reports, we make note of. Right. I do that explanation, but one of the things that we're looking at is now that we are starting to have a dedicated capital reserve, possibly tracking operational budget differently than your capital budget. Because the main reason is that capital projects oftentimes last over several years. So the danger of thinking you have more money and committing to do something because you're looking down at a large balance, but what portion of that is committed versus uncommitted. Yeah, that's one of the things that Leif and I are looking at, and we haven't quite figured out anytime you change how you present something, there's always confusion, so we're trying to figure out how to present it so people are clearer rather than it adds confusion. But hopefully we can come up with something by the time you are looking at adopting the final budget in June.
Okay, any more questions?
Chair Liberty, Commissioner Traeger has a comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner Traeger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John actually said what I was going to say, so I'm just going to amplify the need to have a very expedited budgeting process this cycle, and therefore, really, if there are any budgetary requests for the $800,000 in discretionary funds that we are projecting, I would like to ask that your committees agendize that for their very next meeting and bring them to us by the middle of April, if at all possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioner Trega, for that reminder for the chairs to make sure they bring their any budgetary requests to the budget committee. Okay, so moving on now, we go to the...
Actually, if I could just report a little bit of the sense of the budget committee, because it relates...
Sure.
And committee members, if I misstated or please add to this if you have something. I think there was after the report we had a I think we had like close to a 2-hour meeting, and there was I think a general agreement that this year we can just go out and state that we don't need to raise the fee. And the reason why we had that discussion and reached that conclusion was there's a very different, much more elaborate process. We'd have to notice what we think the possible fee might be. We have to prepare a lot more documentation. We'd have to, historically we've held a public workshop on increasing the fee. Usually it means an additional meeting or sometimes two, but usually an additional meeting. I think it was the sense of the committee that we're in a position that we can set the fee at the April board meeting and that there wouldn't be a change. Either now or at that meeting we can explain why it wouldn't go down nor would it go up, but the committee I think felt comfortable that they can return a budget to you in June that's both a revenue and expenditure budget that would show that the fee increase isn't necessary. So I think it was the sense of the committee that unless there was very strong opposition and the board wanted to also set a special meeting and schedule those things, that we're probably coming back to you in April with a fee. And again, it would be the same fee as the current year. And the other points were, get us your proposals as soon as you can if you have any.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. But don't go away, though, because you're going to give us an update on the Remport staffing model.
As I foreshadowed so eloquently a few moments ago, we've made a selection on two office specialists, the two vacant office specialist 2 positions, and I believe both employees will be starting the first week of April. So we're very, very excited about that. One will be downstairs and one will be assisting upstairs. We will be advertising soon for a temporary, not to exceed 6-month office specialist 2 to help out primarily during the registration period, so that my goal is that we finish the entering everything and processing all the forms and information from the annual registration rather than toward the end of September, hopefully during the summer, hopefully before September. We've been doing a lot of database cleanup. We've been doing a lot of several projects. So I really I don't want that to slip or slide. So it's well worth it, since we do have the money, even in this year's budget, to have that resource so that we get ahead of things rather than continue behind. And on April 1st, there'll be the recruitment for the deputy director will be opening, and that'll last most of the month of April. Working with the HR department to update brochure and a list of agencies and places to send it to, separate from the traditional places where it's advertised by the city. The city uses a system called NeoGov, and they send it out to some standard places. I think last time we developed a list of over 150 additional organizations. Sometimes it's to cities that have really strong housing departments. Sometimes it's nonprofit places, housing places, things and the city was late in getting that out. So we're developing a list, and we're going to take responsibility for making sure that the word gets out this time. So my hope is that we will have a good and a long list by the middle of May. So we aim to fill that position before the new fiscal year starts, and I'm very excited about. And I think, Amy, am I missing any? I think those are all the staffing model changes at this point. Are there any questions? No?
Going once, going twice. Okay, good. So let's step back a bit. Let's go back into our action items. Now that Commissioner Chang has joined us, let's go back to action number 7A3, recommended revisions of the rent board agenda production process. And so we had some discussion last month about this. So I would like to give the floor to Commissioner Chang.
Thank you, Chair Laverde. Just to keep it simple, so last time I draw attention to this item because I am very concerned that an individual commissioner cannot bring up an item even if they are in the minority, or even if they cannot get a sponsor, or they don't have any friends on the board. We are all elected officials, and while the board may swing one way politically right now, we must think long-term in regards to how the board might swing in the future, and we must make sure that all members of the elected rent board by the people of Berkeley citywide are able to bring up items. I am also very, very sensitive, and actually I'm going to pass out the item. I'm also very, very sensitive to the, I'm also very sensitive to the fact that we do not want individuals to dominate conversations because they are the token oppositional voice. Well, the rent board cannot afford to not have a dissenting oppositional voice. We should not let that voice be the one that dominates the conversation. So very simply put, when we discuss the item in regards to setting the agenda, which is F and G and H, you'll notice that Chair Laverde and I, and thank you, Chair Laverde, decided that, well, we came to a compromise that we hope that the board will agree to, which is it's first and foremost, as stated before, an item on an issue that has not been to a committee or before a full board previously requires at least 2 sponsors to place it directly on action agenda. So that was the status quo. What I have asked for in addition is, in the event a commissioner has no co-sponsor, an individual commissioner may submit an item directly on the action agenda, but will only be permitted 3 minutes to discuss the item. The board shall decide by a vote after the 3 minutes whether to continue to discuss the item at that or a future meeting, or whether the matter should be referred to a committee first. So I certainly hope that the board will support this compromise. I feel like on one end it allows commissioners to, 1, be able to be a dissenting voice and have their voices heard. 2, not have to sponsor legislation that they disagree with simply because they want to make sure somebody is heard. And 3, all doors open and all voices welcome.
Second.
So you move second. Anyone else?
With a friendly amendment?
Yes, what is it?
It's a very simple thing. Second sentence, the board shall decide by vote after 3 minutes or less, whether, etc.
Sure, that's good. I can take that. Well, up to, you know what, why don't we do it, the vote after, up to 3 minutes. The board shall decide by vote after.
Would you mind just saying 3 or fewer minutes?
Yeah, 3 or fewer minutes would be good.
3 minutes or less, what's the difference?
Because less is not something that you use in that sentence.
fewer.
It would be fewer. 'cause
I
you
went
count
Fewer
it.
is the proper word.
Richmond schools, so that is proper language and grammar. Thank you.
What about within 3 minutes?
Yeah, 3 minutes or fewer.
Exactly. 3 or fewer minutes.
Yes, that is actually the.
I propose within 3 minutes as a compromise. No.
Accept.
Okay, so we have, the motion has been seconded. So we have to take a voice roll call.
Sorry, so is that the only change?
That's the only change?
There's actually one other change that
H?
suggested. It's yes.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
It's 3A. In 3A, the word not was put in there instead of generally be printed. It says generally not be printed.
Yeah. So we were, and I can explain that if folks want.
Well, you know, it's okay. I mean, the agenda was this thick.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so that's just a waste of paper. We want to be more ecologically conscious, and we weren't with those big agenda items.
Right.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to clarify, I didn't hear who the mover was.
I guess I was the mover.
Okay, that's
So
what
I
I assumed.
motion.
And seconded by Commissioner Soto-Vigil?
Exactly. So are we ready for a vote?
Yes, let's vote, please.
Okay. To move the item with the changes just stated, Commissioner Alpert?
Aye.
Chang?
Yes.
Murphy?
Yes.
Poblet?
Yes.
Solosky?
Yes.
Sotoville?
Yes.
Commissioner Tregub? Commissioner Tregub? Igor?
Bueller.
See if we still have them. Igor, can you hear me? Well, he's still connected. I'm going to...
Seeing how we have enough vote to pass it, we can just take his vote after the matter of fact, if that's okay.
If that's okay with the chair.
Of course. Yes. So what are you proposing, Commissioner Chang?
I'm just saying that since we can't get a hold of, for some whatever reason.
Hang on, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Igor just texted. Igor, can you hear me now? He said that he can hear us, but we can't hear him. Hold on just a moment, please.
No, I think we have to do voice.
If you can just give me a moment. Thank you.
No worries.
Okay, Igor, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so it's your turn to vote on the item.
Yes.
Thank you. And Chair Laverde?
Yes.
Great, motion carries.
Great. Okay, so moving on to the next item that we had stopped, we're going to recommend a change to the membership of the 4x4 Joint Committee on Housing. So I had earlier asked who wanted to speak to this matter, and Commissioner Soto-Vigil and Commissioner Solosky. Does anyone else want to speak on this matter? Okay. So you can speak. I'll give you 2 minutes because we spoke about this extensively at the last meeting. So there's no need to really start rehashing it, going over and over again. So you have 2 minutes to talk. Go ahead.
Oh, Chair, I just want to let you know that Commissioner Tregub said he would like to speak third.
Oh, he'd like to speak third?
If that's
okay, great. Okay,
Thank you.
So I'm going to call in Commissioner Soto-Vigil first, please.
Could I go first? It's my item.
I want Commissioner Soto-Vigil to go first.
I'll defer to Commissioner Solosky first. Thank you.
1 second.
And for the record, it was an information item last time, so this is new. And I think sometimes things weren't more than 2 minutes if it's a brand new item.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then go ahead, Commissioner Solosky. I'm just looking for my timer here.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I have one.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, first of all, I have no animosity toward the chair, toward Solly, toward anyone on this board. Reason I brought this forward, we did discuss this briefly at the last meeting. Reason I brought this forward is I have, it may be a little old-fashioned, I have this belief in ethics, and I have this belief in perception of integrity, but certainly the perception of integrity. I have, in the past, not appointed people to the 4x4 who were involved in City Hall. And I think, personally, I think it's a bad practice to have people sitting in the council members or the mayor's office sitting on the 4x4. I believe, I don't just believe, I know the board and board members often are accused of being insiders. And I think that perception is a dangerous perception at times. And of course, anybody who's an elected official is an insider. They have a constituency or constituencies, they know people, they have a network. That I will never deny. But to be that close to a council member and or the mayor, to actually sit in their office as a staff member, calls into question loyalty. And as I said at the last meeting, basically, how many hats can you wear? And who's your master? Who do you answer to in the final analysis? And I think it does raise that legitimate question. I am not saying that Solly is unethical. I am not saying the chair is unethical. It is not personal and about personalities. It is about the integrity of the board and the perception of that integrity. And to me, that's important. I actually believe in governance. It's an old-fashioned term that has no meaning anymore with what's going on nationally. But I actually believe in it. I think we owe the voters and the residents of Berkeley a fair and honest board that is not pulled in various directions by various forces. And for now, I'm going to leave it at that. I guess my time is up anyway. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Sotovihid?
Thank you. Very well said, Commissioner Solosky.
Thank you.
I have been in that position wearing multiple hats, so I understand that it may not affect you today or somebody who has dual hats. And I'm speaking to both Commissioner Chang and Commissioner Alper. Been in your exact shoes for several years. And there are conflicts. There absolutely are conflicts. Whether or not your council person that you work for, who is your employer and signs your checks and you're an at-will employee of, will tell you to do something, there are nudges, there are expectations. You are an extension of them illegally. Absolutely. That is absolutely true. What I'm concerned about is not only what Commissioner Solosky indicated, but I can't understand why we are here right now having to submit an item put forward after the extensive conversation on the information item, and there hasn't been a compromise. Clearly, several board members are concerned, are deeply concerned. So much so that we would put this item forward, and it has never been put forward to a rent board commission before since on my time, that any commissioner would put forward an item challenging the chair's appointment process. It's never been done since I've been on this board, and I've been on this board for 6.5 years. So that's a really important deal that I think needs to be considered by the chair and this board. What we have is, with the current process, is a lack of South Berkeley's viewpoint being on the 4x4. Now that I work in South Berkeley, they have a very, very different viewpoint than where I live, which is North Berkeley, or downtown, or West Berkeley, or the Hills. Very, very different. Or campus viewpoint, which is represented by Councilmember Robinson on the 4x4. So I think it's very important that we have our community representation from a variety of diverse viewpoints. And my last point is adding to what Commissioner Solosky said. It adds to the insular viewpoint that council and their staff are out of touch and isolated, really. And I went to the Friends of Adeline meeting this last Monday, and I tell you, if their viewpoint is not present in the 4x4, the 4x4 is lacking a very historical lens, a lens of equity, of ethnic justice, of racial justice, of economic justice. And I'm not saying that the way that either of Commissioner Soley has that viewpoint or would lack that viewpoint, but it doesn't have the historical nature.
Commissioner, thank you very much. Your
South
time is up.
Berkeley has and needs on the 4x4.
Thank you. Commissioner Tragub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to make 2 points. One of them is I want to see if it might be possible to, notwithstanding whoever ends up being appointed to the 4x4, to see if we can appoint an alternate who can participate as a full voting member in the event that one of the 4x4 members is unable to. Given the importance of this committee, it is important that this committee be fully staffed at all times. My second point is that I am deeply sympathetic to the arguments that are proffered tonight. However, in checking the rules, it appears that the rules are silent about who has the power to appoint, whether it's the chair or unilaterally, or whether it is the chair with concurrence by the board. And I would suggest that we may want to look into amending the rules, and I am happy to work with someone or the chair on language that we can bring back to the board next month. It would probably take a very simple change. Just the chair can make decisions with concurrence of the rent board, same as what the mayor can do with concurrence of the council. But without having those guardrails for what we are able to do tonight, I do not feel comfortable debating the membership of any committee in a piecemeal fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tragub. Commissioner Alpert.
Thank you, Chair. Question for staff. Have the employees or council members or the mayor ever served on the 4x4 before?
Yes.
Thank you. Every member of this board has my phone number, and I've received 0 calls from any members of this board with regards to my position on the 4x4. There was ample opportunity throughout this process for any of them to call me to ask me my opinion, to ask whether I would be willing to step off it, and there never was. So when I was elected to this board, I knew I would be the youngest member. It's become evident that it's true in age, but not maturity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to comment. So it is the tradition of this board that the chair appoints the people to the committee. And it is a right of the rent board members, if they don't like something that the chair has done or an appointment to any committee that the that the committee members, the commissioners do have a right to bring it to vote. So It's not personal. You have every right to do it. Regarding this situation, on December, I requested that all the committee members provided me their requests for committees, and I gave them by January 10th. Not everybody gave me those committee requests by January 10th, so I had to chase some people down. I actually, on January 12th, texted Commissioner Murphy, and I said, hey there, hello there, please send me your committee preferences. Commissioner Murphy responded with eviction, Section 8 foreclosure, committee outreach. And here are her two committees that she asked for. Commissioner Murphy did not ask for the 4x4 committee. She didn't ask for it. I think maybe the assumption was that because the previous chair had just put him automatically on the committee, that would happen with the new chair. I also requested that all the committee members give me their preferences. All the committee members, I got 3 committee members requesting to be on the 4x4 committee: Commissioner Simon Weisberg, Commissioner Traeger, and Commissioner Alpert. I saw no reason why I shouldn't appoint them to the committee. They wanted to be on the committee. I had a commissioner who didn't want to be on the committee. How was I supposed to know that they wanted to be on a committee when they never told me to be on a committee? So, you know, I'm not a mind reader. I'm also not going to be holding people's hands. You know, all the commissioners had ample opportunity to decide which committee they wanted to be on. I have not received one phone call from Commissioner Sotrovihil. I've requested to talk, did not contact me. Commissioner Solosky was requested. I left him a phone call, did not talk to me. Commissioner Murphy has not reached out to me. So, you know, you can challenge all you want, but if you're not putting yourself out there to request what you want, then I can't read people's minds, okay? So, plus that, I mean, I'm being asked to remove a commissioner that represents a constituency that is what represents at least 45% of renters in Berkeley. Commissioner Alpert is a student from Berkeley, and we know from the last 2009 Berkeley survey that at least 45% of renters in Berkeley are students. Why there's a request now to remove a student voice from a very important committee, which looks, you know, students are the most affected, are really vastly affected by current state law. Students are coming in, they face higher rents, they deal with overcrowding, they deal with all sorts of issues as students. So Commissioner Alpert is very qualified. Actually, I have to say, when I was appointed to the 4x4 the first time I won election, I had less legislative experience than Commissioner Alpert, and no one questioned my experience. No one said that I was, you know, it was too soon for me to be on the 4x4. No one said anything. Some of the things that are being written here are just, it seems to me, ageism. You know, and you say that we don't have any representation on the 4x4 committee in the South Berkeley District. City Council woman Cheryl Dalvidal represents the district.
She's West Berkeley.
She's in District 2.
So anyways, so that's what I have to say. Commissioner Murphy, you now want to speak. Okay, everyone's had a chance to speak. Commissioner Murphy, and then we're calling to the vote.
I want to speak as well.
You're out of order.
Sorry, Christina.
That's okay. So what I would like to say is, I have anxiety. And after hearing the chair speak right now, you have made me start shaking. I'm wondering why it's so aggressive, like why we can't come to an agreement as a board. Since the 3 years I've been on, I have not had this experience, right? And so what I want to say is I'm not on the stand for if I can be on the 4x4 or not. There's an item that was pushed forward to ask that we take in consideration to remove solely for whatever the reason that they came up with the other commissioners. For the record, I had a conversation with the chair and told the chair that I think it's very important that the voice of South Berkeley be on the 4x4. We already are losing the people of color in Berkeley, and it's very important that someone from South Berkeley, I'm in South Berkeley, be a voice. We need to be at that table. We continue to be on the menu to where so many things are happening, but it's happening without the voice of the people of color. And the response I got from the chair was, I am a person of color, but I wasn't talking about a person of the Latino community. I was talking about of African American voice, and that's what I was told. And so what I said was, okay, if you feel you're the voice of the voice of the people of color, fine, I'm not going to argue with you. Okay, have a nice day, because I'm not into arguing back and forth. I'm here to serve the community. They voted for me, and it's important for my voice to be on it. And I really appreciate everyone that has supported me on this, because it's not easy going up against the chair decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to take the vote.
Point of privilege, please.
This is to the staff. I understand that right now we have this time limit thing. Did we agree to this board process? It's the chair's prerogative? Is that what it is? I just want to know the process thing, because it seems like...
The board can set their procedures.
Okay.
The chair generally runs the meeting, and that's the way, that's part of the board's procedures, but the board can override the chair by vote.
Okay, so 2 things. So I understand that it's the chair that sets the procedure, and I understand that it's the board that can override the procedure. What I don't understand then is if, let's say, we have a 2-minute time limit for this action item, does that mean that moving forward, all of our items for this proceeding, for this coming year, is only going to allow us 2 minutes to speak on an item?
That's not the way I understood this, but the board has, rather, the chair has the independent authority to run the meeting in the way that she sees fit, and if the commissioners disagree with it, that decision can be overridden by vote.
Okay, so just to make sure, the chair can change the rules on how each action item is being presented and discussed?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I just want to add that we have a lot of items. We have a lot more to go on this. Okay, so
Excuse me, Chair.
we're going to vote now.
Excuse me, Chair.
So we're going to take a vote.
Everything else is information item with the exception of the appeal.
So we're going to vote now, Commissioner Sotovihil.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to support Commissioner Solosky and Sotovihil's motion, and I'd like to have discussion, which is under motion, our rules motion 2A, which allows for debate. Because all we did was discuss the item. Now we need a motion. And it is debatable, so this can continue as long as we want.
So we need a motion to move to the vote? Is that what you're saying?
No, a motion to vote. If you're going to end discussion, we can do another procedural move to allow more debate, if that's the way you want to go.
I move that we end discussion on this item, because we talked about this item a lot last month, so...
So are you calling the question? Because we have to vote on that.
All I want to do is clarify some points. That's simple.
I move that we go to vote.
Can we clarify the motion we're voting on?
Okay, can you, yeah.
Information, there is not a motion in a second. There's no motion in a second on the floor that I know of. Am I wrong?
There's a motion by Sotovihil. It has not been seconded. So therefore...
I'm going to make a motion, since I want to continue discussing and finish my point. If we want to go through this procedural hoop, we can, or we can continue, have a cordial discussion, or we can just start the vote and then have debate. Do you want to do that?
Point of order.
I'm asking the chair. She's the one in charge.
So I want to close discussion because, like I said, we had ample discussion. We've just have discussion on because it's going to be going on and on. The same issues are going to be pointed on and on. So I would like to request that we close discussion, and I move to close discussion and take a vote.
So there's a motion on the floor now. We cannot take a vote until it is seconded. So Commissioner Sotovihil has made a motion. I have not heard a second.
I'm going to second.
Wait, so...
And the motion is that the board reinstate Christina Murphy to the 4x4.
Well, can I just
We don't have to vote on it. It
So
allows
you're-
more discussion.
Can I state what the proposal actually says?
Sure.
Please.
Go ahead.
We
Go ahead, you
are
have the chair.
actually asking the chair to reconsider. And if the chair refuses to reconsider, then the proposal is asking for a vote. So the first and the second is on that matter,
Correct.
okay? Just so we're clear.
Sure, no, I understand. So, yeah, so your proposal was well, that's why I want to go to the vote. Yeah, it's what your motion was, is to vote to see if you, so yes, so let's go to the vote.
Excuse me, Chair.
I move that we go to the vote. Yes, Commissioner Sotovihil.
You can't move because there's a motion on the floor, first of all. And when there's a motion on the floor, per the rules that we just adopted last vote, there is opportunity for commissioners to debate not only this motion, but any other motion that is on the floor. You cannot just arbitrarily suspend debate because you don't like the item.
No, it's not that I don't like the item. I just want to move on from this item. We spent a lot of time, as I repeat.
Wait,
Okay,
so can I substitute motion then? I want to substitute motion for us to basically bring this item back for the next meeting, because there's clearly a lot of tension and a lot of misunderstanding. I'm personally really embarrassed by what's going on, really am, and I certainly hope that, you know, there's 3 people clearly not talking to the chair, according to the chair, and I hope that the chair will take this opportunity when we bring it up next meeting to mediate the situation. I hope that maybe staff, the executive director can mediate. We're supposed to have a retreat in which we're supposed to do some team bonding exercises, set visions. You know, I'm willing to table until that happens. So my substitute motion is that we, not table, the word is to continue this item until the next meeting. That's my substitute motion, if somebody wants to second that.
Point of order.
Commissioner Traeger has a point of order. Chair, may he speak?
Thank you. Commissioner Chang, I believe what you have as your motion is indeed a motion to table. It is a motion to table until the next meeting. I will actually second it. And a motion to table is non-debatable. So we have to go to a vote now on that motion.
Commissioner Traeger was correct.
And just so you know, I do hope that ultimately this item gets resolved and gets pulled instead of a vote.
Thank you. Okay, so let's
we have a motion on the floor that
Sure.
cannot be discussed any further. Moved by Chang, seconded by Traeger to table this item to the next meeting. Commissioner Alpert.
Pass.
Chang.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Pass.
Pablet.
Pass.
Solosky.
So this is the substitute motion?
This is a substitute motion.
To table until?
To table to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Question to staff. If he changed the motion, or if it was changed as to move to the next agenda item, or to the next meeting, it's not a table. In effect, it's a table, but we can say the last 3 things we want to say about this item, if we want to.
Wait, I'm confused. I thought my motion was to continue this to the next meeting.
Yours is continue. Igor want to change it to table, which has a procedural effect, not according to our rules that we just adopted, but according to Robert's rules of ending debate. Our rules don't have that. Do our rules have table?
Wait, but mine's the substitute motion, so he can't substitute a substitute motion.
That's not what Commissioner.
You seconded your motion, changing it to table.
Yeah, but
Okay, we're
in the middle of a
we're in the middle of a vote, please.
We're clarifying.
We're in the middle.
We're clarifying what was.
Commissioner Sotovihil, hold on a second. We're in the middle of a motion, of a roll call. Did you want to respond?
Sure. If you want an interpretation, I'm happy to provide.
Yes, I know. Okay. I know we're in the middle, but please give us your interpretation.
Okay. Yes. Generally, the board's rules are that except where stated here, you follow Robert's rules. Mm-hmm. So it would be, so it's just the rules about tabling or continuing. I believe my interpretation would be that tabling with this particular date is the same. You're able to table
you're able to table, and there is no, until it's brought up again, it's indefinite, or if you're tabling to time, you're able to do that as well, so.
Yeah, but I also never agreed to my seconder's thing in regards to tabling. I never consented to that. So technically speaking, we're voting on my motion unless I don't get a second motioner, which is totally fine. That means that we go back to the original motion. But my motion was that we continue this item to the next meeting. Igor, if you want to second it, that's fine. If you don't, that's totally fine as well. There is no substitute motions.
Well, if I withdraw my second, then unless someone else wants to second to continue, the only difference between the two motions is that a motion to table is non-debatable, and we are in the middle of a vote on that. That is the only functional difference between the two motions.
Yes, but I never consented to tabling, which means that whatever we vote for would be invalid because I never consented to it.
So Amy, so can you pick us up? Where were we? And
so at this point, we're in the middle of a vote moved by Chang to continue this item to the next meeting. When Commissioner Tragub seconded, he stated that his understanding was that continuing and tabling were effectively the same thing, but tabling carries a very specific connotation that it ends debate. Then we began a vote that we are now in the middle of. So my suggestion would be, if people are not clear on what we're voting on, that we should not continue this vote and have the motion restated for clarity.
I also don't have a seconder.
Hold on a second. So let's restate.
So my second is that my motion is to continue this item to the next meeting in hopes that the person that presented this item will actually withdraw it and that the chair will come to a resolve. But that being said, the motion is just to continue this item to the next meeting.
We have a second. Okay.
And this is the substitute motion. So there's a new substitute motion on the floor, just to be very clear, moved by Chang, seconded by Sotovihil, to continue this item to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay.
Is everyone clear on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So, Chair, back to you.
I'd like to speak.
So hold on, Commissioner. So we now need to vote to see if we are in favor of that, correct?
Correct.
No, I'd like to debate the motion.
Okay. Commissioner Sotovihil.
Thank you very much.
Okay, but hold on a second. I do want to add a two-minute limit on this again, because we have a lot of items on. So please, it's not that I don't want you to speak, but you have to be straight and to the point, and you have 2 minutes. Okay?
Okay, since I'm the only one who's gotten twice on that, that's okay. Question to staff, except for Commissioner Solosky, the author. Question to staff, and I hope my 2 minutes are not exhausted on this. If we look at the item that we just passed in terms of our rules, you said, and I remember our historical practice has been that we would use Robert's Rules of Order if our rules are silent. And thank you for saying that. But the top line of our new rules updated February 19th that we adopted today said these rules are adapted from Robert's Rules of Order. It's silent to utilizing Robert's Rules of Order when our rules are silent. So I would say, based on how that's written, these are our only rules, and not to use Robert's Rules of Order when it's silent, because it doesn't say that. So if we want to do that, which I would suggest that we do in the future, that we modify this for the next meeting and put it on our agenda. Does that make sense? Yes. To either of you.
That you would like something explicit in the board rules that says that in the event that there's silence in the rules, that Robert's Rules of Orders are followed?
Yeah, because the way it's written to me, adapted from means that we extracted the parts that we want
I
and
don't, I mean,
kicked
you
out the
don't need
rest.
staff's approval for that. You can go ahead and do that as a board agenda item.
I guess my question is legally when it says adapted from Robert's rules, it actually kicks out everything else and took from Robert's rules that we wanted.
There's nothing legal about it. The board can run its own meetings using whichever rules it wishes to employ.
I move to call the
there's
question.
nothing- I mean, I'm not sure.
Hold up, that's one portion.
Thank you very much.
Please.
To call the question, so we have to vote to vote.
No, dude, you're gonna do
You're
this?
out of order. You've had your time, so you're out of order.
That was a procedural question. That was a procedural question. Come on, Paula.
Come on.
I know.
Wait, but I'm
Commissioner
sorry,
Sol-
it's time to vote, so we can continue discussion. We're voting to voting. Okay, he called the question, we're voting to voting.
Okay.
Which means, well, then vote no. He literally just called the question to vote, so we're voting to vote.
Just a
vote
reminder,
no.
please, that the chair is actually
Yes,
running the
yes.
meeting.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner Chang. Okay, Commissioner Solosky, you wanted to say something?
Motion to call the question.
I do
Motion, I'm
briefly.
sorry. Call. Oh, hold on, sorry, call to question.
You're calling the question?
Yeah, that's, I can't hear you, Sully, please turn on your mic.
I move to call the question, which has to be voted on immediately and cannot be interrupted, and interrupts the debate.
Could you please clarify?
Do I get to
what we're
speak or
voting?
not?
We're
not
voting
clear.
on whether or not to proceed to a vote
I know,
on the
I know.
substitute motion,
Hold
just
on.
to continue the item.
So,
there's a motion on the floor to call the question. Is there
yeah,
a
call the
second?
question. Let's
You
call
don't
the
need a
question.
second.
I think you do.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to call the question. Commissioner Alpert?
Yes.
Hold up, the motion to call the question requires a second.
It did,
chair
it got a
just
second.
seconded.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Chang?
No.
Commissioner Murphy?
No.
Commissioner Poblete?
Pass.
No.
Solosky?
No.
I'm sorry, was that a no or a yes?
What's that? No.
Thank you. Simon Weisberg is not here. Sotheby Hill?
No.
Commissioner Tregu?
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Poblete?
Could you clarify what we're voting on? There's so many.
The motion right now on the floor is to call the question, moved by Alpert, seconded by
To call
Lagarde.
the question of.
To vote immediately on the item without further discussion.
To vote on
To
James's
vote on the
motion.
continuance, thank you.
Correct.
Without further discussion? No.
Chair Lagarde?
No.
Okay, motion fails.
Chair?
1601.
I had the floor, please.
1602.
When I was in-
Commissioner Solosky.
Sorry.
You've had your chance.
Listen, my intent was not to belabor this. It was not to create animosity and hard feelings, which, again, seems to be what's going on here. But I think it does. It does kind of indicate that there's somewhat of a lack of communication here. And I was accused of not calling Paula. I did talk to Paula, by the way. I was accused by Solly of not letting him know. I can only talk to 3 other board members legally on any item that we're taking action on, okay? I talked to Paola, I talked to Christina, I talked to Alejandro. That's it. I'm not talking to anybody else. Igor called me also. I didn't return his calls. I cannot talk to anybody else legally, and I take that seriously. So can we stop with accusations and he said, she said, this, that? And I'm just going to ask people to try to envision and believe in good intent, okay? I'm not out to get anybody here. I'm not. I'm not after the chair. I'm not after Solly. I'm not. That's not my intent. I know sometimes things are not pleasant. This is not, I'm not up here to be pleasant all the time. I'm up here to do the right thing, in my view. Okay? Now, you can disagree with me, and that's absolutely fair. But that's why I'm here. And I'm going to try to do that to the best of my ability. Okay? And I don't want hard feelings. And as I said, I'm not going after you guys. This is not personal. It's about the board, for me. It's about the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Commissioner Sotomayor has spoken. Commissioner Alpert.
Oh my goodness.
Go ahead, Commissioner Alpert.
I feel like I'm up here with Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I feel like I'm up here with
Commissioner
Tom.
Poblé and then Commissioner Alpert. Commissioner Murphy, would you like to speak?
I'll give mine to Alejandro.
Okay.
Like, goodness
Thank you.
gracious.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm up here with Tom Bates.
Come on.
No, don't shush me. That's rude. I'm not a puppy. For real. Don't
You're out of order,
disrespect, but
Commissioner.
don't
You're out of
disrespect me.
Commissioner.
That's all.
You're out of order,
I'm
Commissioner.
out of
Go
commissioner.
ahead.
That's what you think, but I'm not. Don't be
Go
rude.
ahead, Commissioner Poblé.
I'm still learning the procedure, so I might need some help on this. I am in agreement with what Commissioner Trega brought up earlier about the process of appointments being something we could consider a different process on if somebody brought a proposal for that. And without one, the practice was very different from our last chair to this chair. And I'm aware that there's a difference of race and gender between the last chair and this chair. And there are many important issues on the table here. And I think that this recommendation has been discussed a fair amount online and offline in the last meeting. And I wanted to know if it's possible to call the question on the recommendation to change the membership of the 4x4 Joint Committee at this point, because it has a...
The second motion takes precedence over the first motion. So we have to vote on the substitute motion before we can vote on the main motion.
Microphone, please.
So we have to vote on the first motion. We have to vote on the substitute motion before we can vote on the main motion.
Which is the substitute on the table?
The substitute motion is to continue the item to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay, can I call that question?
No, but Solly already voted that.
He did, and we voted no.
You can't.
So I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, so the substitute motion is now off the table, which leaves us with the main motion, which was moved by Sotovihil, seconded by Solosky. That was the motion to ask the chair to reconsider. It was basically the item in your packet. So that is the
Madam
motion.
Chair.
Go ahead. Hold on, Commissioner Trega. Commissioner Povlet, you're done with your comment? Okay, Commissioner Alpert, and then Commissioner Trega.
And can I have the timer, please, so we can be consistent with 2 minutes?
Thank you.
For a question for the Executive Director, the Brown Act only applies to agendized items that are agendized for council for board discussion, correct? Effectively, or things that the board could take action on.
The question is what again?
So appointments by the chair to commissions and the membership of commissions are things that can be discussed by the commission as a body without notification because they are not points that the board would take action on. Right? The topic of the membership of a committee is not an actionable subject. So we could all sit around and discuss it without the Brown Act taking effect.
It's an actionable subject when it's on the action item.
Once it was made an action item, but before that it wasn't.
Not according to board policy, because it was understood that the board, or rather that the chair made these appointments.
Sure, so it was only the unprecedented step of making this an action item on our calendar that restricted communication. Before this was made an item and put on our calendar, the people who put it on the calendar could have spoken to any number of commissioners about it, because that's how the Brown Act works. So at any point before an item was introduced, I could have gotten any kind of calls or any kind of notification, unless that wasn't, is that not the case?
I'm sorry, are you asking me?
Oh, yeah, I just don't, that's my understanding of the Brown Act, but I could be wrong.
Mr. Brown would be a better person to direct that question
apologies.
to.
I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you've just said.
Okay, so just wanted to state that.
Okay, Commissioner Trega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try to echo what I previously said and what Commissioner Pablet also appears to have said, which is, I think now is a good time for us to take a step back and think about how we might be able to clear up some procedures, which we can do at the next meeting, that would take the guessing and the uncertainty and many of the questions out of this process. I am all for discussion further tonight if there is a sense that it's going to get us somewhere. I have a feeling that it's not, based on the train of conversation that we've had for the last half hour. We have an appeal tonight, which does need to be heard. We have other issues to discuss. I think Commissioner Cheng had a great model. The item that we just voted on, he basically took to Chair Laverde and worked out an agreement and brought something back. And it was voted on in very quick fashion because it took out the disagreement and the guessing out of a different item. And this is what I hope to do, and I am very willing to bring something back, which is also going to include a mechanism for appointing alternates to important committees like the 4x4. With that, I would like to make a substitute motion to table this item until the next meeting.
That already lost.
Second.
Oh, no, that's right.
So we have a second to?
So, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Speak into the microphone.
I'm really confused because as much as Alejandro pulled his second, we never entertained another second for my motion. Now, if nobody else wants to second my motion, that's totally fine, but
I'll
I just want to point out that, honestly, like, as you can see, we're all learning, like, well, not me, because I know my parliamentary procedures, but we're all learning, so, like, you know, like, a lot of us here, like, don't understand that when someone withdraws their motions, like, there might need to be at least a chance for somebody else to second. And now Solly motioned a second, and now Igor motioned a second. Like, I'm just really concerned. Yeah. And I hope I can have my 2 minutes, but I also want to hear what everybody else has to say first. So I never got my 2 minutes. But anyways, it doesn't matter. I don't know, I feel like somebody else wants to speak.
Point of order. If there's a motion and second to table, can that be debated?
my understanding is no.
No, and as I understand it, the active motion, substitute motion on the table, or rather on the floor, is to table this. So we can't go back to the other motion that Commissioner Ching made, which currently does not take a second, because that would be a substitute motion at this point.
Okay.
So at this point, there is a substitute motion on the table, rather on the floor, to table this matter until the next regularly scheduled board meeting in April.
Okay, so.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Point of clarification, I thought the whole point of tabling means that the chair doesn't have to bring this back to the next meeting versus continuing this item to the next meeting.
No, the tabling mechanism only suspends debate.
Okay, so it means that if it does pass, it does come back to the next board meeting.
Correct.
Okay. Cool.
Yes, I'm not tabling it indefinitely. I'm only tabling it until the next meeting, and I'm happy to work with up to 3 others, including, if you're interested, Commissioner Chang, with you to bring something forward for the next meeting.
I'm not interested, but I will vote in favor of this motion.
Yeah. Maybe you should.
So can we take you're out of order, please? Can we take a vote?
Yes. So this vote, just for clarification, is the substitute motion to table this item to the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Commissioner Alpert?
Aye.
Pardon?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Chang?
Pass.
Commissioner Murphy?
Pass.
Pablet?
Pass.
Solosky?
Yes.
Sotovigil?
No.
Commissioner Tregu?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Oh, yes.
Murphy?
Yes.
Your mic.
Sorry, I turned my mic off. Yes.
Thank you. Pablett?
No.
Chair Laverde?
No.
Motion carries 5-3-0-1. So this item is tabled to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay, great.
And we will not be voting on the main motion.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to take a 5-minute break.
Yes, that would be a good idea. So if you could turn your mics off, please, everyone.
Chair Laverde, can
Yes.
I make my recusal announcement now?
Yeah, we're on a break right now, so just have to wait 5 minutes, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Commissioner Trigger, I'm putting you on mute.
And okay. Sure, thank you.
When the chair calls you up.
You having fun?
There's a power outlet, there's one right here, ground plug, that'll be, okay. Now, so Michael, in terms of where we want the mics, it'd be nice position of have ours. So perhaps your side should be here, whoever the court reporter is. Okay. She should be, because this is where the power outlet is, so perhaps she should be here, and then whoever's speaking should be more proximate to the microphone. Does that make sense?
I'm calling the meeting back to order. Thank you, everyone. So it is now 8:43, and we have an appeal to attend to. So can I please call the parties of the appeal up to the front, please? Where's my appeal? Where's my appeal documents? Oh, shit, oh, shit, oh, shit, oh, shit.
All right. Okay.
I have my little cheat sheet. Thank you very much. So is Commissioner Traeger on the line?
No, Commissioner Traeger asked me to announce that he is recusing himself, and he will send me the explanation for why, and I'll note it in the minutes.
Okay. Fine then. We now go to the issue of case number E91, 2401 Waring Street, units B and C. I had my little cheat sheet here for information, so let's first go with a summary by Councillor Brown.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioners. 2401 Waring Street was a large single-family home that was operated as a rooming house prior to landlord's acquisition of the property. In 2013, the landlord applied for a zoning approval to convert the building into a triplex. The building was approved and construction was completed in 2015. The conversion created a new unit, Unit A, at the basement level, and divided the upper units into Units B and C. On May 11, 2017, Rent Board Staff Attorney Matthew Siegel issued an administrative determination that Units B and C are not exempt because they were created from existing residential space. He cited Burien LLC v. Wiley, a case interpreting a Costa-Hawkins new construction exemption. Burien held that certificates of occupancy that result from the conversion of one type of residential use to another do not create exemptions from rent control. On appeal, the landlord argues that the board should ignore the Burien case and interpret Costa-Hawkins more broadly. The landlord claims that the board has no jurisdiction to interpret the applicability of the new construction exemption, that the legal authority relied upon by the hearing examiner is inapplicable to the facts of the case, and that the decision has impermissible retroactive effect. These arguments misconstrue the law and the legal effect of board action. Essentially, appellant would have you believe that the board has no authority to ever interpret Costa-Hawkins. This simply can't be so. Remember that Costa-Hawkins as a law has no independent authority other than to provide limitations on the way that jurisdictions are able to implement rent control. It is a law that circumscribes municipalities' abilities to impose controls on rents. Nowhere in the law is there a specific reference to any one city. There is just a set of rules that generally bind rent control jurisdictions. The board literally must interpret Costa-Hawkins in every single hearing because Costa-Hawkins eliminated broad swaths of the ordinance. First, the board certainly has the authority to interpret the exemptions from the ordinance. That is the most fundamental aspect of determining whether or not the board has the ability to proceed with imposing rent ceilings and adjustments. Of course, the board has the jurisdiction to interpret applicability of exemptions. Who else would do it? There's no state panel that interprets the applicability of Costa-Hawkins. Burien and Da Vinci, another case that we relied upon heavily, are both cases where the state appellate courts upheld rulings of the rent boards regarding the applicability of exemptions. And in Burien, the question was explicitly about state law. Second, the legal conclusions in the Burien case are not narrowly tailored to apply only to condominiums. The court held that the purpose of the Costa-Hawkins exemption for new construction is to encourage the creation of units that enlarge the housing supply. Unit A enlarged the housing supply and is exempt from the ordinance as new construction. And units B and C merely reconfigured an existing residential rooming house. Third, appellants introduced the novel approach of, quote, countable integers as the method for evaluating whether a project enlarges the housing supply with zero legal authority. The units in Burien and Da Vinci were, quote, units, but courts upheld those cities' determinations that those certificates of occupancy weren't indicative of new housing supply. Appellant would have you ignore Burien and Da Vinci on the theory that the facts are distinguishable. However, as we laid out on page 6 of the recommendation, the facts of the cases are actually quite similar. Appellants have also relied on the Palmer case as authority, in support of their argument. The legislature acted to supersede Palmer because it was overly strict in interpreting Costa-Hawkins. It indeed has no precedential value. Lastly, nothing about the decision applies retroactively. Rent control applies going forward, not back to when the unit was originally converted. Laws change, and units may be subject to new regulations when they do. The hearing examiner correctly determined that the subject units are not exempt from the rent ordinance. Therefore, the board should affirm the decision.
Thank you. So next, each party will have 7 minutes to address the board. The appellant first, 5 minutes, and then the respondent for 7 minutes, and then the appellant for additional 2 minutes. I'd like to remind both parties that this is not a new hearing of your case. No new evidence may be presented to the board. Your presentation must be based on the evidence that was before the hearing examiner. So right now, the appellant, can you please identify yourself, and you will have 5 minutes.
Yes, good evening. My name is Scott Friedman. I'm here on behalf of Appellant NCR Properties, LLC. The principal of that LLC apologizes he could not be here tonight. He's actually with his wife, who's on the verge of giving birth to his 5th child, and they've been in and out of the hospital already with contractions. So probably more information than you needed, but please do accept his apologies. It's for a good reason. So with that, I'll dive right in. The issue, or the law here that we're here to discuss tonight, is the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act, which is a state law. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but what the relevant provision says is, notwithstanding any other provision of law, an owner of real property gets to set the rent for a unit without regard for local rent control if it has a certificate of occupancy issued after February 1, 1995. And so the question in this case is, what does that language mean? And is the Berkeley regulation that council referred to, can that contravene that? And the issue is not so much, does the rent board have authority to interpret Costa-Hawkins? The issue is, does the rent board have authority to interpret it in such a way that it contravenes the language of Costa-Hawkins? And that's where the decision falls down. The Burien decision that Mr. Brown referred to is rather an opposite here. In that case, it involved the mere conversion of a property that was previously rent-controlled rental units into condominiums, and the owner attempted to circumvent the rent control regulations by merely filing some paperwork with the city. There was no change in the building, there was no change to anything other than some paperwork. And in the Burien decision, the court said, No, this is exactly what this limitation in Costa-Hawkins was designed to do. It was designed to foreclose that type of sneaky behavior by landlords. That's not what we're dealing with here in this case. This building was far from the simple paperwork conversion that was present in Burien. Burien also noted that the goal of this Costa-Hawkins section that was discussed was to further the construction of additional rental housing supply. In Burien, there was no additional rental housing supply. It was the same number of units before and after. In this case, we have what was a single-family home that became 3 units. Now, finding Burien to be on point here is simply an opposite for that reason alone. The property was a single-family home. It contained 1 legal unit. It had been illegally used as a mini dorm or a boarding house, and the property owner could have sought permission to restore it to its lawful use, which would have been consistent with zoning and other requirements. That approach would have been at odds with the creation of additional housing. It would have resulted from 1 unit to 1 unit. Instead, in reliance on representations, authorizations, and a variety of other interactions with the city, the property owner decided to convert this property to 3 units, thereby increasing the stock of residential housing supply. A lot is made about bedrooms and bathrooms and the language I guess we use to describe that in our papers. But if the goal of Costa-Hawkins, as identified in Burien, is to add additional rental housing that is best promoted by finding that a property owner should be constructing and building 3 units where there previously had been 1. A further point that I'd like to make, and I'm pleased that Mr. Brown is here to talk about this, because in talking about these issues before, relative to Regulation 510, which is a regulation effectively helping to interpret Costa-Hawkins, Mr. Brown noted that the regulation that was passed for a number of reasons. And I'm quoting Mr. Brown's March 20th, 2017 letter to the board, wherein he says the explanations for this new language are as follows. First, as discussed above, state law prevents the rent board from controlling the rents of any unit that has a certificate of occupancy issued after February 1 of 1995, including converted or rehabilitated units. This means that if a unit created by conversion receives a certificate of occupancy after February 1 of 1995, it is exempt under state law. Those are Mr. Brown's words on this very issue. So in short, the Burien decision is on point but limited to its facts, and the facts are clearly distinct from the facts in this case. So while it may be controlling authority, it does not control in this case because the facts are clearly distinct. The regulations that enact this and interpret this have been interpreted by staff attorney here, and were also the same interpretations that were given to my client as it was in the midst of making this decision to convert a single-family home into 3 units. And those types of decisions don't get made lightly, but they were made based on those representations, and we believe they should be upheld. And so for those reasons, we believe the decision should be reversed.
Thank you very much. Now is the respondent's turn. You have 7 minutes. Can you please identify yourself, or is the respondent? Oh, sorry. Okay, we have no respondent here today. So then you have another 2 minutes.
Very well, thank you then. I'd like to address briefly the Da Vinci decision, which council also referred to. The Da Vinci decision predates Costa-Hawkins. It was actually decided at a time before there was such a thing as Costa-Hawkins. So while it may be interesting for talking about some of San Francisco's rules that applied at the time, it is not authority for how Costa-Hawkins can or should be applied in this case. And I want to get back to the intention of Costa-Hawkins and the intention of this specific section that was discussed in the Burien decision, because I think that's really important here. The intention, as Mr. Brown noted, is to further the purpose of creating additional housing. And if the purpose of that section is to create additional housing and encourage the creation of additional housing, making a decision where a homeowner decides to voluntarily take what would otherwise be an exempt property, a single-family home that was not rent-controlled to begin with, and convert that into 3 units, he thereby creates rent-controlled units. If that is the policy of this board, and that is the decision, and that is how Burien is to be interpreted here, that is going to have the absolute opposite effect of what was intended by Costa-Hawkins and what is intended, or should be intended by this board. If we want to encourage the creation of additional housing, the creation of 3 units where there previously been 1, then property owners should be given that limited exemption provided for by state law to have those units exempted from rent control. They're not necessarily exempted from eviction control, but they should be exempted from rent control per section 1954.52. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Alpert.
Yes, I'd like to move to reject the appeal and uphold the hearing examiner's decision.
I'll second. I'll second. I'll second. I'll second.
Okay. So we don't need to take a roll call now because Commissioner Tragob?
Commissioner Tragob is temporarily off the call.
Oh, so we have a motion and we have a second. So can we take a vote?
I would prefer if it's a roll call vote because this still is a hearing that's being attended, or rather this is a meeting that's being attended by a remote participant. So if you could do a roll call vote, I would prefer that.
That's fine. Let's do a roll call vote then.
Okay, so this is to affirm the hearing examiner's decision. Commissioner Alpert?
Aye.
Chang? The mic, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Murphy?
Yes.
Pablett?
Yes.
Solosky?
Yes.
Simon Weisberg?
Yes.
Sotovigil?
Yes.
Commissioner Tragob has recused himself. Chair Laverde?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Chair, if you'll just give me a moment, Commissioner Tragob said he would come back on the call when we were finished with the appeal. So let me just make sure that he's connected.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to wait for Commissioner Tragob?
Correct.
Let me know.
Sure, just one moment. Sorry, I texted him. Commissioner Tragob, can you hear me? So, Commissioner Tragob, can you just speak into the microphone to let us know you're here?
I'm here.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. So now we're going to go back to the Section 8, the information announcements. So we're going to go now to the legislative update.
Yes, last month, Brian Augusta, our legislative advocate, was here and provided a report, general overview and a report on several specific bills. And at that time, he promised that many more bills were still being introduced, the final language and the intent of those bills. So before you have a listing of, somewhere between 100, I think about 150 bills or so, perhaps more, with a very brief summary. So normally when he's done his presentation, there's the entire listing of the bills that have been submitted related to housing and affordable housing or rent control. So this basically just supplements his report from last time. So this gives you an idea of all that's been submitted. If there's interest in future bill or coming back with more information on anything, we'd be happy to do that.
Anybody have any comments, any questions about this? Okay, great.
Oh, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Tragob.
Maybe just a quick comment. I believe both the chair and I were on a call today of the East Bay housing organizations. And
yes, we were.
With a number of recommendations to endorse many of these bills, in particular the ones dealing with tenant protections. And I think this is going to be a very promising year when it comes to the lay of the land for tenant protections at the statewide level. So more to come, but I do think it would be, when appropriate, it would be great to have Brian Augusta back to provide further recommendations on bills that we may wish to take positions on.
Thank you very much. So next on the agenda item is a market medium report for the third and fourth quarters of 2018. Executive Director Kalekian on these very, very interesting numbers.
Okay. Well, rents continue to, despite some published reports, rents in 2018 continue to go up for over the entire period of time. Studios increased. Let's see. Hold on.
From 1 year.
Yeah, from 1 year to
52%.
I was looking from 1 year. From the fourth quarter to the fourth, I was looking for the year totals, but just on the front of this, in the fourth quarter of 2017 to the fourth quarter of 2018, 12% for studios, 8% for one bedrooms, 12% for two bedrooms, and 7% for three bedrooms. Last month when we reported, we noted that there was an increase in the number of units that turned over, or at least reported as turned over last year. For the first two quarters, that continued through the entire year. So just the numbers are there. And then at your request, prior request, what we've done is we measured the size of increase for tenants, for median rent for tenancies, which started in 2013, compared to median rents for tenancies, which started in 2018. Studios went from 1186 to 1800 over that 5-year period, which is a 52% increase. One bedrooms from 1504 to 2195, a 46% increase over that 5-year period. Two bedrooms, 1887 to 2990, 58% increase. And three bedrooms went up 45% from $2,695 to $3,900. So I'd be happy to, if you have any other questions, or I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Any comments from any of the commissioners? I do want to say that I find these numbers again. Last year, for studio apartments, the increase was nearly 67% from 2012 to 2017. And this year, I mean, so we're just not moving it 1 year over. From the past 5 years, rents have gone up, you know, more than 45%, you know, 52%, 46%, 58%. And these are in rent-controlled units. So this is a true effect of decontrol and what Costa-Hawkins has done. And we wonder why we have more homeless people. It's not because we have more people who are mentally ill, not because we have more people who are drug addicts, it's we have more people who cannot afford these outrageous rents. This is what's causing the displacement in Berkeley. This is why we're losing people of color in Berkeley and people who aren't working in the tech industries, because if you're working, you know, in a restaurant, if you're just an average worker and you're not in the tech industry, you cannot afford to live in Berkeley. Any other comments? Okay, and put your, okay, Commissioner Simon Weisberg.
I would be interested in us, how, I don't know if this could go to the outreach committee, but just, I think we, you know, want to get this information out, especially in telling the narrative and explaining to folks what the impact of not having any kind of vacancy control. Because I think most cities don't have the data that we have. And so, you know, when people are saying, you know, rent control doesn't help, it's because we don't have vacancy control anymore. And again, we don't have the data in most cities.
Commissioner Chang?
Yeah, and it would be improper for me to just mention that while there is a lot of wealth and a lot of wealthy people and a lot of wealthily employed folks who work in the tech industry, entry-level tech workers face the same type of economic insecurity and inability to afford a lot of the things that others will not be able to afford in the Bay Area.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving to item 6, owner move and evictions tracking report. Who is to give this information? I mean, people, the commissioners are welcome to read it.
I can say as the chair of the committee, the report is in there. There's no outliers, really. So read it. It's good to keep track of that. Part of why we keep track of it is to see any big changes. We don't see big changes in this report.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. So now we go to short-term rental applications. The report's there. We see that the number's increasing from last month. I went from 465 to 473 applications. Would you like to add anything else, Mr. Killican?
Not on that. No.
Okay.
Again, that item will be discussed at the 4x4 committee, but probably we'll discuss that when we get to the committee reports.
Great. Great, thank you. So on item number 8 is a copy of the report to City Council dated March 12th on implementations of the Council's funding of additional anti-displacement related services. Would you like to say anything?
Sure, briefly, and then if the board members have any questions. This report is dated March 12th, but it actually was pulled from the council agenda and it's been rescheduled to April 2nd. So the council received the report in your packet on April 2nd, and they asked for, in addition to staff being there, to discuss this presentation from EBCLC and EDC, so they can talk about the actual programs that they've been doing. We prepared this at the request of the City Council when they authorized the funding. They wanted. We set up guidelines for, we worked with city staff as far as how we would be monitoring the two different contracts. Just taking a step back, for years the Rent Board has funded the Eviction Defense Center and the East Bay Community Law Center, pretty much as a response to the large number of dramatic increase in attempted evictions after Costa-Hawkins increased, or after Costa-Hawkins passed. It became an incentive to push people out so that the rent could be raised. So in response to that, the board began funding for representation of low-income clients. The philosophy was that people of middle and higher income could represent themselves, but the main impact would be on low-income people. So that's always been, for over 20 years, that's been the approach that the board's taken. 2 years ago, given the expanded scope of the affordable housing crisis and with rents going up as dramatically as the prior report that I discussed showed, once again, we had a very strong incentive for evictions. Council understood this, and they expanded the scope of, so they added money. They added $300,000 for each of 2 years. And so they basically, to the same two organizations that we funded, and to make sure that it was done in coordination, they asked, and the board approved, authorized this approval, that we amended those contracts and that we oversee the two of them to make sure that it's done in coordination. We do this with the knowledge of the housing department. We made sure that their issues were raised when before we executed the amended contracts. The measurements and the terms of the amended contracts were also done in coordination with the city. And the city asked that we basically monitor it, so we've continued to monitor it. The one thing that's the money from the excuse me, the new money from the city council has done, it's allowed the scope of who is able to receive services has been expanded. So with our money, it's limited still to low income, but with city council money, it includes moderate income. It allows counseling on city ordinances other than the rent stabilization ordinance. So for example, the tenant protection ordinance, the tenant buyout ordinance, other things. So we've tried to cover some of those changes here, and the report covers what the measurements were. Previously, board members had asked for demographics, or board members and council members asked for demographics, so that's included here. And they wanted case studies to get an idea of what kinds of services. So that's what this report is.
Thank you. Commissioner Soto-Vigil?
Thanks, Jay. When did you say they're going to come and present?
April 2nd.
Great. Okay, maybe I can save this question, but maybe you can answer this if you know this already. But
I'll try.
With the council's newly allocated funds that are outside of the previous scope, where tenants can ask about affecting ordinances. Mm-hmm. Do you know if East Bay Community Law Center and Eviction Defense Center, more specifically East Bay Community Law Center, are analyzing how the horrendous RV proposal to kick homeless folks who are in RVs out? Are they looking at that ordinance and potentially legally challenging the mayor and Keith Sarwani's motion and second to approve that last meeting?
I haven't heard anything either way, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've spoken to him since council took that action either, but no, so I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Does everybody know about that proposal?
Yes,
Okay.
thank
All
you.
right.
Commissioner Simon Weisberg?
I was just wondering where the location is of the EDC satellite office?
I knew, but I can't remember. I can definitely get back to you. I'm sorry.
And do you know any details about the hotline or folks? Is it like what do you know any details about the hotline? And do they like answer questions and do consultations or?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that that's a line where somebody can leave a message and somebody from the agency would get back to them, but I'm not sure.
Oh, but do you know if what services are provided through the hotline?
I do not.
You don't know, okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Murphy?
Does anybody have the hotline number?
Could we maybe put it on a future agenda item to get the hotline number and what it does and put it on the website and?
Sure, yeah, I mean, we can get that from the EDC. They can provide that to us.
Okay.
They have provided, I just don't have it, and yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Is that the hotline number in here?
That is their, I don't think it's, I mean, that's their number.
Go ahead.
We were just looking at we definitely have the numbers. I don't know if that's different, but can we put this on the screen?
I would prefer a little briefing so that we can be good
Yeah.
advocates of, or giving people information about this in an informed way.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the next item, number 9, copy of the March 12th letter to the council regarding the establishing of a Berkeley Fair Chance ordinance. We sent a letter stating that we strongly support council's October 30th, 2018 action to direct the city manager and 4x4 committee to consider adopting and implementing a fair chance ordinance to bar housing providers from taking adverse action against formerly incarcerated tenants. So hopefully we'll be seeing that item in the 4x4 committee soon. Next item is a copy of the February 22, 2019 letter sent to Berkeley tenants with their apparent lawful rent ceiling notices. I have a question actually to the executive director. I received my letter. I mean, I know landlords got their letters, and I did receive my letter. And I just haven't brought it up, but the date is wrong. So I'm just curious, I mean, how might that affect? I mean, it's wrong by 2 months, but I'm wondering how might that affect?
Are you saying that the tenancy start date is wrong?
Yes.
I mean, it likely would have no effect unless it's spanned at a year. In other words, if it said November 1st, 2017, when it's actually January 1st of 2018, then it would have effect on when you could, the rent could be increased moving forward. I mean, it's something that you might ask the landlord to correct and give the correct information, because if the date is wrong, the other information that we have associated with the tenancy, I'm assuming, because you didn't say that the rental amount is wrong, that it's not wrong, but we might have the wrong, person identified who's not you, for example. So, it would be a good idea. It's always a good idea for us to have updated information that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
And you as a tenant are permitted to submit that as well, as long as you do so with a rental agreement, a written rental agreement.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, that's good to know. I'll do that. Okay, so item number 11, copy of the March 1st, 2019 letter sent to, we already did that. Item 12, Rumport February 2019 tip of the month. Commissioners can go into the item and take a peek at what the tip of the month was. Item 14, update on recent and upcoming Rumport outreach events. Executive Director.
I think the item speaks for itself. Is that, oh, I'm sorry, item 13.
14.
Item 14, yeah, does anybody from the outreach committee prefer doing this? Because you just got a report a few weeks ago, I think, and
I think y'all are doing a great job.
Okay, yeah, the number of workshops has been dramatically increasing, and the attendance as well. I know that the night that we had the budget personnel committee, I think there was, I believe it was, there was between 90 and 100 people that were registered to attend that. I don't know how many actually attended. The week before, there were over 60 people at a workshop. So the public information unit staff and sometimes, in some cases, the legal department assisting them, doing just a tremendous job. People are really coming out.
Yeah, we, excuse me, Moni Law and I, it's not in here, but Moni Law and I a few weeks ago, did a workshop at Marvin Gardens Realty that was attended by about 40 or 50 realtors. And Marvin Nettles, another counselor, and I are going to the OBAR, the Association of Bay Area, Berkeley, I can't remember what it is, but it's basically realtors from all over the area. Say it again, please.
Oakland, Berkeley.
Oakland, Berkeley, yeah.
Oakland, Berkeley Association of Realtors.
Thank you. So we are going to go to their annual luncheon, or one of their luncheons, on the 27th, and that's always we do that every year, and usually Jay joins us for that, and that's always a lively presentation, because there's usually close to 100, if not more, people in attendance. That'll be next Wednesday if anybody wants to come over. We have had commissioners come in the past. I know that Asa Dodsworth came to several of those to view and even participate. So you're welcome to come to that. If you need to know where it is, I can let you know.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Simon Weisberg? Okay.
I was just curious if there were any kind of commonly asked questions, particularly by realtors.
Yeah, golden duplexes. They always have questions about golden duplexes because that, those are the more coveted properties and the ones that that bring in the highest prices for them.
So it would help then if we just got rid of them, so there wouldn't be any questions.
No comment.
Concurrence.
Clever. Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, so we go to items 15 and 16. They're placed there by Commissioner Traeger. Any comments, Commissioner Traeger?
No comments. The items speak for themselves. Thank you.
Next, item 17. It's a dollars and cents article written by Stephen Barton. It's called The Economics of Residential Rent Control. I do suggest that the commissioners read it. It does provide some really good information, good talking points actually, for why rent control is so effective. The Executive Director has 2 more items that I'm sure must stand for themselves.
Yes.
Also, item 20 is an article that would be good for everyone to read, as well as item 21. I do also recommend that commissioners read item 22. It's a Daily Cal article by Grace Newland titled "Berkeley's Housing Empire Built on Fraud and Sexual Slavery." Interesting history about the largest housing business in Berkeley, if you haven't had a chance to read it. We go to item 23, a Washington Post article. And then item 24, Vice Chair Simon Weisberg, would you like to comment about that?
Well, I just, just to kind of lift up how the whole country is, trying to strengthen their tenant protections, and that when Virginia has stronger protections than California, we need to get on it.
Thank you. Commissioner Trygub has several more articles. I think you said they all stand on their own merits?
Yeah, and just wanted to recognize, Chair Laverde, Vice Chair Simon Weisberg, Commissioner Cheng, and anyone else who I may have inadvertently left out, for coming out and speaking in San Leandro when the council was debating and ended up unanimously voting to move forward with a modicum of additional tenant protections in that jurisdiction.
Commissioner
go ahead.
Trygub, I think you meant Hayward.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I did mean Hayward and San Leandro. We still have some work to do there.
Yeah. I did want to just also just lift up the Hayward Collective, which is an amazing, dynamic local tenant group in Hayward that's really leading the way. A bunch of folks who grew up in Hayward, went away to college, and are now back and showing incredible leadership.
Thank you very much.
And I want to lift up both our City of Berkeley staff and our Berkeley Rent Stabilization Board staff in the more recent articles that have come out about the Hayward City Council. I'm just so glad that we do not have a staff that limits our that wants to limit our ability to propose legislation. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that might end all our information items. Now, next we go to committee board meetings, updates, and announcements. So we're starting with the budget and personnel. Oh, Igor, Commissioner Trygub.
I believe we are scheduled to meet in 2 weeks. Is that right, Jay?
We're scheduled to meet March 26th, so 2 weeks after our original meeting, but I was going to ask if we could postpone that to the following week. We won't have any additional budget updates by next week, but we should have something the following week. We also are hopeful that we'll be able to do a presentation on the status of the database situation.
That's fine with me. That's fine with my colleagues.
And we can pick a specific date offline if that's possible.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. So next we go to eviction, Section 8, and foreclosure.
We're scheduling that meeting and in conversation with IRA, AGA, and registration about potential reshaping of the committees.
Thank you. So the Habitable and Sustainable Housing, HASH Committee?
Thank you so much. I want to first and foremost thank our staff person, Leaf, and also our fellow Commissioner Trygub and Sotovihil. We will be meeting on April 2nd, and we will be continuing to finalize our work plan.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Trygub.
Madam Chair, just wanted to note, I received an email from Leaf earlier this evening, and he's asking if we would prefer to meet then or maybe move the meeting to May. His preference is to only meet once between April and May. So to my colleagues who haven't seen that email yet, they will probably see it in their inbox when they return.
Okay, thank you. So the RA, AGA, and registration. Okay.
Yes, we met and have started reviewing lots of different regulations at the things that staff, particularly who meet with the public, either thought were repetitive or kind of unclear, and that some changes will just help it make it easier for the public to understand. So we started going through those to give staff direction as to which ones could be consolidated, repealed because they no longer are an issue, or things that would just be helpful to restructure. So we look forward to, we'll be seeing some proposed language coming back, and then look forward to bringing it to the full board. We also will decide to have a standing meeting, which I keep thinking it's the second something, but can you remind us?
I didn't bring my notes on this, but I believe it's the first Tuesday of the month. I can't remember.
All right. Well, we have notes, and we'll get that to folks, but just we're going to propose to folks that it's helpful if folks are doing regular, like a set time, a set date, particularly those, since we're all on different committees. Can I reach back to something on one of the other committees? Is that appropriate? Just that on the, and I don't know, I apologize if this came up earlier when we were talking about the motion regarding the executive director's vacation time. Just that, staff.
Move to consent.
It was moved to consent. Okay. One of the things that came up in personnel, and I just kind of wanted to to bring it up, is that staff have to spend a lot of time corralling us and when's the date and all of these things. And so just want to encourage folks to be more responsive so that they're not using time doing that.
Thank you. So anything on the ad hoc committee on technology? Did you guys meet? Can't hear you.
There is no chair, but not yet, and I'm still pursuing that goal of being chair of the technology committee.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the next is a 4x4 Joint Committee on Housing. We met on March 4th. We had a very interesting meeting. We were given an update on the Rental Housing Safety Program, also known as the RHSP, by Jenny McNulty, the Resilient Building Program Manager for Berkeley's Building and Safety Division. And the RHSP requires all owners of rental property to certify annually by July 1st that their units meet housing safety standards on a checklist form prepared by the city. In order to run the program, a fee is charged, and that fee has not been raised in 10 years almost, since 2009. So the proposal is they're proposing to increase the fee from $26 to $52 over a period. These funds will pay for the mandatory cyclical inspection of all rental units. The goal is to have them inspected every 5 years. We were also informed that there are 360 rental housing businesses that have had liens placed on them or against them by the city for failure to pay citations issued by the RHSP for violations of the regulations. So just to let you know, I've requested that the RHSP provide the rent board with a list of those 360 businesses to determine which of these are subject to the rent stabilization ordinance. And then we were also, there was also another item presented in the meeting, and for that information, I now call upon Vice Chair Commissioner Leah Simon Reisberg.
So one of the things that we introduced was, and we discussed was having a universal rent registry. In Berkeley right now, the only units that have to produce their rents or register them with the rent board are obviously the rent-controlled ones, but that leaves out all of the ADUs, new construction are kind of the two main ones. But we also wanted to, I mean, essentially the idea is that we, as part of making sure that we're implementing the right housing policies, it's helpful to know what the units are. We talk a lot about that ADUs will produce more housing that's affordable to low-income folks, but we don't have any information to declare that to be true or not. We assume that land trust-owned properties also are, which you know, which I do believe to be true, but we don't really have the data. And so I think that there are a lot of different properties that it's important to know exactly what it is. Also to know how much turnover there is, you know, in new construction, whether when they're turned over, how much are they really increasing. So I think it's just really important information for the city to have to ensure that the policies that we're developing are working. And I think we've come up with some really good proposals. The next step is to meet with staff, city staff, because I think at this point it would be a city implemented ordinance. There was discussion, you know, whether the city would pay the rent board to institute it, since obviously we have lots of expertise, and I think we're just not sure yet. One of the proposals was to have the fee be, and the whole kind of registration process to be part of code enforcement. I think that when we were presenting it was the first time code enforcement was hearing about it, so it was premature to know whether that would work or not. So now we kind of have to, you know, talk to the folks who have to implement these pieces and see, you know, what their feedback is in terms of the process.
Great, thank you. So there's nothing to report on the, oh, sorry, excuse me. Go ahead, Commissioner Sotovejil.
So on the rental housing safety program, are they talking about implementing or modifying the ordinance to include mold and mildew?
That wasn't provided to us. That information wasn't provided.
They're still lagging on that?
I don't know.
There was a proposal several years ago that we pushed, I think it was in, oh God, 2003 or something, and they said it would cost $500,000, which is obviously an overestimate. But if you can bring that back up, the 4x4, there's been an analysis by city staff, I think 2003, 2004, something like that, or maybe in 2005. I mean, it's been a long time. That would be great.
Sure. I mean, you know, what was good is that they were finally able to get some new staff, and you know, once they get these new funding, if the rents go, the fees goes up, and they can hire more people, they're going to start looking at these issues every 5 years. So, okay. Thank you very much. Nothing on the 2x2x2 on the Committee on Housing, Council, Rent Board, and the School District.
Chair?
Does anyone?
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Traeger said he has a comment.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Traeger.
Oh, thank you. This is to Commissioner Sotovejil's point. You know, absolutely happy to bring that up the next time there's an opportunity. And Jenny McNulty is going around right now to various commissions. She came to the Housing Advisory Commission earlier this month as well. One of the things that I've been pushing for is to make sure that when inspectors come out to do proactive rental housing safety program inspections, that they also look at the history of the unit in the context of other ordinances that we have on the books but don't really enforce, such as the smoke-free house, or only enforce when there's a complaint that comes into staff. So from the smoke-free housing ordinance to the elevator ordinance to other ordinances. And I think the mold ordinance can also have that same vehicle where when our HSP staff comes out and does an inspection, they could also check for mold at the same time.
Thank you.
One last point, sorry.
Well, go ahead,
Thank
Commissioner.
you. Similarly to elected officials doing police ride-alongs, I think the rent board commissioners should go to housing inspections. I know I've done a number of them when I was a city council staff member. I know Christina Murphy has done some in her previous occupation. And I would recommend, because this actually comes to life, it's just not numbers, there's people's faces, etc. So that's my point.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah, and I'm still like a little hurt that I have not been invited.
You have to invite yourself.
Like I said, I'm still very hurt that I have not been invited.
Okay, well, I will definitely, I've been on many.
And I certainly hope, oh, sorry.
Oh, my goodness.
Go ahead, Commissioner Chang.
And I certainly hope that they'll invite the chair of the rent board.
That's fine.
Personally.
Thank you.
Can I clarify?
Thank you, but I'd love to go on a ride-along. I mean, once you're there with an inspector, I've been with inspectors in Cal OSHA, Labor Commissioner's Office. I've been on many ride-alongs with police officers from Housing Authority to Inglewood PD to San Francisco PD. So this would be lots of fun and really eye-opening. So, okay, Commissioner Alpert.
Yeah, question for Commissioner Soto-Vigil. Who would be the person to ask for that?
Well, the community asked me. They contacted the office, and I did the inspections with them, supervising, examining the staff, doing a proper job. That was kind of my scope, is looking at that from that lens. Basically, it takes time to meet the community, to know them, and have them trust you, to bring them, to ask them to come and I'm being real with you. You wanted to know. It's people actually ask you. So I benefited because so many people trusted and knew Chris as a tenant activist. He couldn't make them all, so I went. And so I was fortunate to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I guess the question was more on the staff side. If it was going to ask someone to go on an inspection, who would I ask on staff? I guess I'd pose that to.
You could probably ask Ms. McNulty.
Ms. McNulty, okay. Yeah. I'll ask her then.
Okay, Commissioner Simon Weisberg.
I also just want to remember, folks, that when you're going in, that you are going into other people's homes. So I think it's important that the tenant have invited you. It's a little bit weird to, I mean, frankly, it's kind of like when people ride along for people to get arrested. I find it a little odd myself. But anyway, the other thing is that just for people to realize that what they're trying to do is implement, they're actively putting together legislation so that they will be doing proactive inspections. And I mean, that's going to bring a whole new world to Berkeley, which is really fabulous, and that landlords will know that every unit's going to be inspected. They can't just be in a situation where, as long as their tenants are afraid to ask for repairs or to call the city, that they won't have to make those repairs. So I think that we, want to make sure that we continue to provide that support, because that will increase the fees to landlords. So it's important that that the code enforcement get that community support to have a more robust program.
Thank you. Commissioner Murphy?
So I would like us to take the time out to have one moment of silence. Oakland City Council member Lynette Gibson McElhaney, excuse me, lost her son on March 11th to a tragedy. And so if we could just take one moment of silence in memory of her son, Victor McElhaney, I would greatly appreciate it, and hopefully we can adjourn.
In his honor. Thank you very much. Go ahead,
I have an
Commissioner
adjournment as well.
Sure, go ahead.
One of the greatest people on earth just died February 22nd. His name was Jeff Adachi. Jeff Adachi was a champion of the poor, a filmmaker, a bar survival kit author, elected official, police watchdog, and as one of his staffers who's very close to him told me, quote, he was a role model, a rock star, a badass, all rolled up into one skinny ass Sacto street fighter. So we lost the true champion, and he'll never be replaced.
Thank you very much. And on that, I adjourn the meeting. Okay.
Hallelujah, holla back, y'all.
Pack it up quick. Get out. I gotta be in LA. I gotta get.
If you don't hear from me Monday, I'll.
No problem. This is a good one.
I'll follow up with me again on the item.
Oh, thank you.
It's the only email that's unread, meaning by because I read all. I like one.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, that's something that I'll come in with Joe and let him figure out.
Okay, whenever you get to, it's not an ER, but you know, just interested in hearing what you guys think and
If there's
such.
a way to, to coordinate those things. Yeah, no, I mean,
That's what I was, and by the way, I tried to send it on paper, but it's actually, there was no option on here to download. You have to download a player, then download the email player. There wouldn't be. I should just go to the right click and save as, but there was no option.
no, I'll send you
Whenever it is
for YouTube download.
Okay.
Is there, if you go to salad, not popcorn. High quality.
Next time we're
so compelling.
Right, but if they're cutting out,
Yeah.
dress it up a little bit.
But basically,
I gotta get up in the morning.
I was all ready to talk about, you know,
is it just additional? I know, I'm going on. Just have a designated iPad or whatever, something like that. That's just simply for videos. And you just send us a link to.
Well, hey, I can get a motion. We can discuss the motion.
There's a link, I'll talk with you. I want to make sure they get super smooth. You're all right. We'll work that out. Okay. That would probably be the best practice. You don't have to worry about it. We'll commission in. Everybody, audio is there. And we'll figure out a way that we can get that video and audio out. Right. Because that's the way that we figure out on the fly.
That's okay. What you thought was great, I'm still glad that worked, but yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I'm saying. So we can do all that. Otherwise, then we're all fraud. Oh, wait, I see it, but I had these new slides, and I was like, dude, you're a lawyer, dude.
Yeah.
I hope that would get you.
Yeah. No, the next time I'll actually, well, thank you. I should know ahead of time. She does. Yes, they're brand new.
Great, because I just got mine in the mail today, too.
Yeah, I just.
That was the performance.
Don't ask me about the difference.
Yes. The example I always give.
Oh my gosh.
The example that I always say is Bob Evans. We're down there in LA. He made a motion, spoke, and we're going to be jamming out. Right? And that was the basis of the last time I ever.
I'm just happy the appeal went really quick.
You know,
Like super duper quick. Like, shoot, I have my phone. I was like, oh damn, that door slammed on that guy. Which, you know, I was cool. So we had a lot of okay. Yeah. So great job. You're welcome. Well, you know, that's there was no open comment at the end. Was there supposed to be? Or is that saying open comment? Darn it. I don't blame you.
That's even better than
I think
Good night, Amy.
No, but it's, I mean, it's fairly, you know, but his argument is,
But there's more. Right. Right. We exempted it. I mean, that's
only one unit got exempted.
I think, but the rest of it was.
Exactly.
Right. We exempted it. I think the facts are good though, in that if it makes us look good, we can exempt anything.
It's good for us.
They look unreasonable. We're saying, oh, they're getting rid of it. But they want all the units. They only gave it to the units. But the subdivided units don't have it.
No, I think for me, I've learned that
oh,
Then they also show shots of,
you know, I don't love. No, I'm reason I said that.
Because I mean, you have the authority to do that. You wouldn't allow that in work meeting. You would have lost that field if it came here. Well, that's what they did in this case. They provided a building. Really? I'd say about 60% of it was the one who pitched it.
No problem.
Oh, awesome. Yes. Thank you so much.
Next time we have a video, I will. No problem, no problem. That's actually my fault. I forgot to thank the members of the video carryover from last week.